Jesse, cue it up. Everybody in their places. It's time to go.
Are we rolling? Yeah, we're rolling. Okay, let's get it done, everybody. Let's go.
Hey, Reagan, how's my hair? Is it okay?
Poxy, they can't see you.
All right, come on, goats, toots, people. Poxy, start on page 4. Get the lines right this time.
Right, I got it this time, I swear.
4, 3.
Come on. It's time for the Ghost of Hollywood.
Well, hello, wall crawlers. I'm Poxy Leonard here with Miss Reagan, and you are listening to The Ghost of Hollywood.
Tonight's episode marks the beginning of our 3rd season. And to celebrate, we have our friend, Zoran Popovic, joining us on the show to discuss his career as a cinematographer and some of his more recent work on movies such as Clean, The Munsters, or Bullethead, just to name a few.
You know, I'm excited to talk with Zoran now that I've gained my chops on a cinema camera.
Oh, here we go. Poxy runs an area on set for 2 weeks, and all of a sudden he knows it all.
Well, of course I do. I mean, how could you ever doubt me, Reagan?
How couldn't I ever doubt you?
Okay, fair. Anyway, Zoran has a pile of movies to his name, dating back to his early work on Bad City Blues, which was released in the late 1990s. Zoran would continue building his resume for the next few years following, leading to his work on the movie Sin, where he would meet actor Gary Oldman. And then after that, the two collaborated on music videos and some private Cassavetes projects, which we will discuss later.
He's also a longtime collaborator and close friend of director Paul Solet, having worked with Solet on many projects throughout the year, varying in their format and content.
More recently, he has just completed filming The Munsters, directed by Rob Zombie, which was unique in the fact that the cast and crew were largely quarantined together throughout the production due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
More on that later. Now, before we take a quick break, I'd like to remind everybody to check out the complete 2nd season available on our website at theghostofhollywood.com, featuring guests such as Penelope Spheris, Kevin Eastman, Ketty Lester, Sal Tino, and plenty of other stars and creators discussing their work in the show business.
Yeah, you can also sign up for our monthly newsletter directly on the website to keep up with all of the latest on the Ghost of Hollywood.
Alright, wall crawlers, stay tuned because when we return, Zoran Popovic will be with us to talk about cameras and movies.
And I'll also be here, yes.
They know, Poxy.
So, but you can never be too sure.
Yeah, I hear ya.
The end.
You're not supposed to say that.
No, I always want to read that. You know, we never get to read that part at the beginning, the fade-in part either. Why
There's
not?
a reason you're not supposed to.
That's bullshit. I don't understand. What's up, wall crawlers? Going insane for the new episodes of The Ghost of Hollywood? Well, check out our website at theghostofhollywood.com for complete access to our entire 2nd season.
And don't forget to listen, like, and subscribe to The Ghost of Hollywood wherever you get your podcasts for all the latest updates and information.
And while you're at it, sign up for our monthly newsletter.
Alright, everybody, stay tuned because you're listening to the worst in cult, trash, and cinema. This is The Ghost of Hollywood.
Welcome back to The Ghost of Hollywood. I'm Poxy Leonard here with Ms. Reagan, and tonight our friend and well-known cinematographer, Zoran Popovic, has joined us to discuss his career and recent work on movies such as Clean, The Munsters, Breakthrough, and Tread, just to name a few.
With an arsenal of credits to his name, Zoran has worked with several well-known Hollywood figures on varying genres of movies, music videos, and commercials. And while we may not have time to cover everything here, Poxy and I have plenty of questions to ask. That said, welcome to the show, Zoran. How are you this evening?
Thank you so much. I'm doing great.
All right, cool. Well, we're glad to have you. We definitely appreciate you taking the time to join us on the show. Now, let's get to it. When discussing a cinematographer's work, it usually seems best to start by simply asking what sparked your interest in filmmaking before it became a career focus. So let's start there.
Originally, I was born in Serbia, and for me, unknown reason, when I was 12 years old, actually I asked my dad to load his. I actually remember him having like a bunch of cameras that he never used very much. And he had like this copy of Leica, 35mm Leica, which was called Zorki 4 Russian camera. And I asked him to load it for me. And that is how I started actually my career in the visual arts. I was just taking photos of everything on my grandparents and parents and still life. And remember like being super excited about creating an image, looking through the viewfinder and finding something that would spark some joy in me just seeing the image through the viewfinder, and then later on learn how to develop the film and just the magic in the lab was just out of this world. Just seeing the images created out of nothing, materializing on the paper, it was just wonderful. And wanted to actually study photography, but at that time in Serbia they didn't have any schools for photography. And So it happens, a friend of mine actually started a film school, and he suggested, he goes like, why don't you just apply to go to film school for cinematography? And since I just loved watching films, and I remember like right at that time, like maybe at the time as he was telling me this, I watched for the first time Godfather, and remember like thinking like I just had a like incredible joy watching that film, and something happened in me, and I'm like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. I'm gonna go and study cinematography, and that's how the whole love affair actually started. Uh, but then, as I started the film school, that's when the things in Yugoslavia at the time that the country was called were falling apart. You know, the country was falling apart. The political, we're in the middle of the war, and and I happened to have like my English teacher actually at the University of Belgrade, where the camera department was. She was a PhD from Yale. She studied Shakespeare, and she was fantastic. And she told me, like, she just said out of blue, she said, you should go to America and study. And that was just a completely new thought that I never thought of. But yeah, she inspired me. She actually basically suggested I should go to the AFI because she was subscribed to the AFI magazine, and she was sharing with us in the class, and one thing led to another, and I found myself in Los Angeles studying at the AFI.
So when did you actually, when you got to, how long, what was the time, what was the time frame between figuring out about AFI and in this class until you actually landed in LA?
Well, I started the film school. I finished the first year, started the second year in Belgrade, and finished the first semester, and then I got accepted to AFI, and basically I just left the school. I never finished university in Belgrade. I just didn't want to. It was just, I was just on the. It was just like kind of like I followed the feeling. I thought like, my God, this is all happening so fast. I should not say no to this. I don't care about degrees, so basically, I just left the school and packed my bags, and not knowing literally not a single person in Los Angeles, I found myself there. And then usually when you follow the path of heart, as they say, like the doors start opening, you know. So
Yeah.
that's exactly what happened to me. So in a span of 2 years, basically, from starting a film school in Serbia, I found myself in Los Angeles, and I knew that I was doing the right thing. And then just coming to AFI was another completely new open, you know, the new world just opened up for me, and where basically I just learned very, very fast that actually AFI is like such an incredible school, because it was exactly like working in a studio system. We had to make 3 films. We had to team up among ourselves. It was all negotiations from day one with the schoolmates and with school, and about the conditions of the film you're making. So it was literally like working in a mini studio system. And so again, those amazing coincidences, like when you find something that you really love, that start happening. As I was doing my second year thesis film, which was called Tripwire, and with amazing classmates that I made friends in the first year, like production designer Yanis Papadopoulos and the director Hassan Amini.
Okay.
Met the actors on that film that actually changed my life completely. Like Simon Billing was one of the actors, and after we finished that film, he basically comes to me and he goes, "Hey man, listen, I'm doing my first feature, producing, and it's directing by Michael Stevens, and we're looking for cinematographer, and we would like to talk to you about it," which was Bad City Blues. And it turns out that Michael Stevens he was the son of George Stevens Jr., who is actually a big Hollywood producer who produced The Thin Red Line. And also his father, Michael's grandfather, was George Stevens, who is a 2-time Academy Award winner for Place in the Sun and for The Giant.
All right.
So yeah, so it was just like one thing after another, and Michael put us again through really. It was an amazing thing that he actually wanted to work with me and with Yanis, but I guess he saw something in us that we had like this passion for film. Yanis is a production designer, so he basically put us through a series of tests that lasted for a month about like how we would shoot the film, how we would prepare, what we would do, like what equipment and all that.
What kind of
And
tests? Yeah, what were the
not,
tests like though? These tests sound interesting.
uh, it was basically taking the scene and then breaking down the scene and creating the shots and saying like, why would you want to shoot it like this? How would you why would you shoot it? How would you, what would be the style of it? What would the light, the quality of light, the props? Basically it was like
He's really
wanted to
making you
from
think
us to
about it.
basically deliver like deliver the visual style for the film. And we did all that, and he basically gave us a go and hired us to do his first feature film, which is Bad City Blues.
Well, following your so how was working on Bad City Blues? What was that like as your first experience? Because you worked with, I know Dennis Hopper was in the movie, and I wasn't able to source it. We looked everywhere to try and find it. It was really, we weren't able to find it. We found everything else, but I'm a huge Dennis Hopper fan, so I was curious, what was the whole thing like putting that together as
Yeah,
a first
Dennis Hopper. I
feature?
mean, it was really like it was for me. It was just that not really. I haven't even haven't even graduated from AFI then. But then getting on to work on that film, I realized what connections and how people are grateful for every little thing that happens. So with Dennis Hopper was Michael Stevens went to Dennis Hopper and asked him to be in the film.
Yeah.
And the Dennis Hopper, I don't know if you know, but Dennis Hopper's first part was in The Giant, which Michael's grandfather directed. The Giant with James Dean. So basically what happened, he went to talk to him about being in a movie, and Dennis Hopper said, like, listen, Michael, I don't need to read the script. Just tell me when to show up. Your grandfather was so generous with me that I'll do whatever you need me to do. And that's how Dennis Hopper ended up in the film. And it was just amazing. It was amazing for me to go from semi-amateur actors being at AFI, although they're all to work with the super professionals like Dennis Hopper and the rest of the crew, like a Michael Massey and the rest of them who were in the film.
Yeah.
It was, and then shooting on a 35 millimeter camera and the Panavision and all that. But I remember like the scene that I will never forget was Dennis Hopper was playing like a drunk priest. And we were shooting in Pasadena in this mansion, and the way he would make himself drunk was like that. He would hold the Bible in one hand, the gun in the other, and he would just spinning in the circles. And then he said, "Okay," and then he goes, "After I 5 times, call action." and and it was just like an amazing scene to see. Yeah, but I can send you some clips later on if you I have some clips of that film. I can send you some of that stuff with Dennis Hopper. I'm actually still, since it was my first film, I'm very proud of it and of the look and everything else. And just to continue, like, because the second film it's really fairly connected with the first one. It was the same writer director team, Michael Stevens and Tim Willocks. And they got like even bigger actors like Gary Oldman and Ving Rhames.
Yeah.
And again, it was like one of those things. Like working with Gary Oldman was because when I was in film school in Belgrade, I remember that English professor who actually helped me come to America. She showed us Dracula, and she was just like all over Gary's performance, and I literally fell in love with the guy. I thought like, man, this is like the best actor I've ever seen. I remember like coming to LA, going to AFI, seeing him one day like on the street. He was waiting for the valet in front of the restaurant, and I thought, my God, I just saw Gary Oldman. Like I was like so excited. I was more excited that like I don't remember being that excited ever. And then like 2 years later, I get to do a movie with him, and it was just like a dream come true. And he told me something like we became sort of friends in that film. Like we had the same sensibilities, like the same movies, and we talked a lot. At that time, both of us smoked, so
Yeah.
on the breaks we would have a cigarette together, and it was just like really great chats. And he basically said at one time, he goes, man, I love directors. Like my favorite directors to work with are the guys who let me do one take for me, and then I do one take for them. And that kind of like stayed with me for a long time. But that film is also important because, as I said, like became friends with Gary. And then after that film, he asked me to shoot his feature that he was supposed to direct.
Yeah.
And the movie is called Joe Buck, actually. And we actually started to shoot that film. We shot for like approximately 3 weeks in his house. Just a little digression to that story about Gary, because Gary is a true artist and incredible writer. And if you guys haven't seen his film that he directed, which is called Kneel by Mouth, I strongly recommend watching it. He got the British Academy Award for it, and incredible talented director. And basically, his idol is John Cassavetes. He has got like framed photo of him in his house.
We share this. And I love everything John Cassavetes did. Like Killing of a Chinese Bookie, Mikey and Nikki owns my soul. So
yeah, no, it's incredible filmmaker, and then Gary used to say, like, he pointed his photo and he goes, "Now that's a good looking man," and basically he basically wanted to shoot it in black and white and on 16 mil. Because Cassavetes shot his films in 16 and Super 16.
You're talking about the earlier ones, like Shadows, right? Or
the earliest film, yeah, like Faces and he shot all that and Woman Under Influence.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew the guy in Culver City who actually restored old cameras, and so we went there, and Gary purchased the camera, 16 millimeter camera, the same one that Cassavetes had, and two lenses. And we went to Fuji, and we got some free film from them.
What lenses did you
Sorry?
use? What lenses did you use? Sorry to interrupt.
Lenses, the Ingenue. They were old 16 millimeter Ingenue lenses.
All right.
We had two of those, and I had C-mount Bolex lenses at home that I brought from Serbia. I had like really good. I still have them. Incredible lens. They are 16 millimeter, but they're 1.4, super fast, and very unique lenses. Very very unique look.
You said they're Bolex, like a Bolex camera? That's crazy.
Yeah, well, they're C-mount, right? So you can actually ACL camera that Gary purchased has a two mounts. He has like a mount for the Ingenue zooms, and then you can turn it around, and he's got the C mount, so you can just screw in the lenses in.
Is it an easy flip?
It's easy flip. It's
cool.
literally you just pull it off, turn it around, and you can usually and sometimes people hold two lenses on it, so you can swiftly change it. You know.
Oh, all right.
And yeah, and that was interesting. We got a Fuji film for free, expired film. Color, and then we turn it into in a post. We turn it into black and white, and it was a fantastic experience. But then, as we were coming closer to him being in the film, he didn't want to be in the film, and just development was too expensive and transferring, so we just stopped the film. But we had this like 3 weeks of incredible time working with Gary and just exploring like all kinds of options how to shoot, and I can tell you, like, not a single shot was just a regular shot. It was always through something. It would take us time to find the shots, you know, and there was no easy shot.
Were you manually pulling focus through the whole thing as well?
Yeah, manually pulling focus. I had my focus puller, Wade Whitley, who actually worked on Sin and Bad City Blues as a focus puller, and he pulled focus without monitor. He was just measuring and just kind of feeling it, you know.
Yeah.
And and Gary exclusively likes to work on the very long lenses. So it wasn't easy, but as I said, it wasn't easy to work with him at all. But I mean, that's why the footage that we got is just like every shot it's just amazing. And another thing that about him, he doesn't like much lighting, you know, so that's also was something new for me. And he likes naturalistic looking and kind of like to orient the scene rather than to light it, just to find the light and then set the scene there where already light already exists, you know, and things like that.
What's the latitude on those cameras? Like, I mean, that must have been difficult back then as far as the lighting is, because of, you know, I mean, but you talked about Godfather being an influence, so you had an idea of what you were looking at for low lighting and things of that nature at the time. Yeah,
I mean, the latitude, it was latitude of the film. So the film has always a good latitude, you know, it was at least like 10 to 12 stops.
Okay,
you know?
Okay.
So you could really pull it. You could really push it far, and you know, it was 200 ISO, which is a low ISO, but still, you know, it's plenty enough if you're shooting during the daytime and if you work with the bounces and stuff like that. It wasn't that difficult actually. It wasn't that bad. It was pretty good. Although, the grain structure is like, if you love, I mean, he loved the grain. I also share that stuff. I find my style is like, I don't really have a style. Like, for example, Roger Deakins, he likes stuff that it's super clean, and he doesn't like the lenses bleeding and stuff like that. I love also that, but I love also other things. I love grain, and I love other things too. I mean, it happened that Gary just finished with when we were shooting that. He told me, he goes like, "Hey man, he did the thing with Tony Scott called Beat the Devil." Which
Okay.
is, I don't know if if you guys are aware of those short films that BMW hired big directors to produce. But they hired Tony Scott to do a movie with Gary Oldman and James Brown. It's called Beat the Devil. I strongly recommend watching it. It's on YouTube, and it's like 12 minutes long, and it's amazing.
All right. All right.
And he goes like, look, they use a bunch of like hand crank camera. I'm like, shit, what's that? And and then, long story, yeah, hand crank camera is basically a Arri 2C that is modified, and he has a hand crank. So 12 cranks is a 1 second.
All
So
right.
if you want you go 12 seconds, or and then you can go forward, then you can backwards, so you get double, triple exposure. So we didn't use that for Joe Buck, but I shot afterwards. I shot with Gary like 4 music videos that he directed, and then we used a lot of hand cranked and all that stuff. We played a lot with it.
You
I
know
mean,
the
one of those music videos was sorry?
No, I didn't mean to
Go
interrupt you. I
ahead.
was going to say the writing team was really actually pretty curious about the relationship you all had, like as far as developing music videos together. So it's cool that you brought that up. Go ahead, continue.
Yeah, we did a music video for Blondie and Perry Farrell. It's called Patient Bossa. You can see it on YouTube. And and we used a lot of hand cranked there. We used we shot on the reversal film that we processed as a negative. So
Hmm.
you get like super grainy, huge grain structure. You get like really poppy colors. And then we use the motion control also. We got donated motion control for that stuff. So that was pretty fun shoot. Uh, and then we did for his ex-wife Alex. We did the music video using a lot of like swing and tilt lenses. That was another thing. Like, for Gary, it's very interesting. Like, anything that doesn't look like everything, more abstract things look, the better it is. And there's beauty in it for sure.
Oh, I can imagine. I mean, you're saying that it's weird saying that Cassavetes is an influence to him puts him in a whole different light. What was it like? What was it like working on Sin when he was just purely acting, though, as opposed to when he takes more of a directorial stand?
It was well, I mean, he's definitely one of the better actors out there, and he just took the directions really well. And then sometimes he actually had idea. And I saw that sometimes he was frustrated because he wanted things to be a certain. He wanted to do certain different things. He wanted to say stuff. He wanted to change things, but he had to follow the structure. He had to follow what the director was saying. But for me, what was interesting to see that he would go from like really playing this like super intense part and crying and falling apart, and then just coming back, lighting a cigarette, and then continuing conversation with me that we had before. And I was stunned. I was like, dude, are you okay? You're like falling apart here, and he was just like nothing happened, and then he would go back to do another take of the same thing. And it was just, I don't know. I was in awe completely. Like, I've never seen anything like that.
Following your work on Bad City Blues and Sin, you would collaborate with director Brian Katkin on the movie Scarecrow Gone Wild. So, what stylistic changes did you have to make to go from shooting in the genre of a drama to this comedic horror film?
Yeah, that's an interesting story. I mean, I got that. I got a call for that from the camera house that I used to work in. He goes, "Hey, there's a friend of ours that doing this horror. If you want to do it." And I was at the time, I just wanted to do anything. Like, I just
Yeah.
wanted to work as much as possible because every project for me was opportunity to try something new.
Yeah.
So I met with Brian. He seemed like a super nice guy. The movie was very low budget, and the script was kind of funny. uh, Not intentionally funny.
No, yeah, but what Brian
But,
worked with he did like trauma stuff back in the day, didn't he?
yeah, he did a lot of stuff. I mean, very experienced director and writer, and I mean, you got to respect his stuff. his passion just to work,
Yeah.
But he didn't believe in his own bullshit also, which I respected very much.
All right, I understand. That makes sense.
Yeah, and but it was interesting because obviously it was a low budget film. It was 12-day shoot,
Mhm.
and that dictated many things how we're going to do it. And it was just like there wasn't much coverage. It was like you had to be very precise about what you about the coverage you needed to get, and uh, in a sense, I lighting. I mean, it was a challenge for me to do the lighting, decent lighting in such a short time with a very little equipment. But having all these experiences working with Gary, I kind of like for me was okay. Let's try to instead of like try to conquer. Let's bring the mountain to us instead of trying to conquer it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I
So
understand.
instead of bring the scene to the windows, and we're gonna light through the windows, and let's play it by the windows. And then later on, you know, you realize like a lot of great filmmakers do the same thing. I mean, Terrence Malick like sets almost all his scenes by the windows because it's just a beautiful light. Window light is like some of the most beautiful light. So it was a fun film to do, but there's a little there's something actually. Some of the shots there, some of the day exteriors that we did in that film, some of the most beautiful day exteriors that I've ever shot. Because unfortunately, there was a big fire, a forest fire at that time in California, and we had like I mean, it was just like a big, like huge smoke over the sky, and you know how in California the sun always blasts.
Oh
So
yeah.
it
Really,
was
a lot
just
of
this
orange.
golden light, very diffused light coming down and lighting everything. And it was just like this really silly scenes lit in this beautiful light. It was very ironic, but still beautiful.
I mean, I could understand, but it would work for the theme of it, with that sort of lighting in a way, I suppose. But it sounds like not having to work with tight coverage and whatnot. What do you have to do when you're put on that kind of constraint in order to cover the ground? Do you just work work closer with the director to make sure that that's exactly what they want?
Yeah, exactly. You just have to work with the director really closely and make sure that they have shots that they want. Uh, as I remember, Brian actually knew like what he wanted to do, like in a wide shot, and what he wanted to cover in a close up, which is very helpful because then you don't have to shoot everything all the time. Like what we tend to do now with the digital. Since we switched to digital, I rarely see people saying like, okay, let's don't shoot this. We're going to cover this in a different setup. He usually is just like, let's go shoot everything from this angle and then turn around and shoot everything from this angle and then just keep shooting and shooting and shooting. I would say that's the main difference between the film days and the digital days, as far as the shooting style goes.
Are you just saying because you don't have to restructure the light so much because the digital takes in so much more light? Is it that sort of versatility to it, or?
What I'm saying is it's cheaper actually to shoot on digital, right? So instead of let's say shooting like a medium shot, you have a long dialogue scene, and then that you have to like back in the day, like back in a Hitchcock days, he knew exactly like he's going to shoot like first 5 lines of dialogue from this angle, and then he's going to go into the over the shoulders, right?
Oh,
So
I'm
he doesn't
following you
have to
now.
cover
So
the scene from the.
you're saying that you're just going to get the coverage of the entire scene from one angle. You're going to take it's almost like playing theater, like taking it all from one shot and then taking it from another. So you're just getting as much coverage as you can of the entirety of the scene.
That's how you get as much coverage as you can, and then you can go back and forth and get all other options. But back in the day, people. I mean, John Ford didn't shoot coverage. He knew he was just shooting the shots that he wanted to shoot. Later on, when we talk about the clean, I mean, we had this almost the same philosophy for that. That's why I love that film in many different ways.
But that was the style that Adrian took to it. I don't want to digress into it yet because we do need to get to it at some point.
Yeah.
We're getting close, but
Exactly.
Anyway, here, Ray, go ahead. Go ahead, Ray. Well, let's let Ray go ahead and ask the question. You'll bring us right to it.
Well, let's talk about director Paul Solet. So, you've worked with him many times, and he has spoken very highly of you in several interviews. So, he's remarked on your strengths in lighting, cinematography, and your ability to capture the essence of the story. So, revisiting the memory for a moment, How did you meet Paul?
Yeah, Paul. It was. I remember actually very everything about our meeting, and I got a call. I just signed up recently before that with the Innovative Artist,
Okay.
and the agent called and said, "Hey, there is this indie film shooting in Canada. The director would love to meet you." So I went. They had in a studio lot. Adam Green's company was producing it, so they had offices on the studio lot, and I went there and I met this like really young and good looking, very, very, read the first. I read the script and I loved it. I thought this is exactly the script that I waited for. I wanted to do this kind of stuff. I loved it. I actually was completely. I wanted to get that film so bad, and then going to meeting Paul and having that conversation with him, it was just great. We bonded. We had a great conversation. I loved his vision for the film, and that he was a first-time director. He never did a feature. He did a short film, Grace, which I haven't seen, but I loved his vision. I loved the passion, and I loved the fact that he wrote the script. I love working with the writers, directors, because then they have ability to change, to adapt, to be able to on a set in the moment to write something new, to create something new, because that's what the filmmaking is all about. Like, it's never finished until it's like released. You have to change it many times in order to make it work. And somebody who is ready to do that, I want to work with people like that. And he told me basically that he wanted to get an interview with me because he watched the movie that I shot with Chris Sealiston called The Lost.
Okay.
And he loved the opening of the film so much because the camera we did it, it was following the guys in the boots for like almost 2 minutes, just a low steady cam shot following the guy, and at the end coming, and then he turns into face. And I loved that shot also, but apparently Paul loved it too. So we bonded on that meeting, and later on, my agent told me like that I should pack my bags and go to Canada, which I was super excited about.
Where were you all at in Canada? Were you in Vancouver? Are you back east?
Actually, we were in this. It was Saskatchewan, in the city called Regina.
Okay.
And at that time, they were shooting a lot of stuff in Regina, and the production company who actually produced the service company was from there, and all the locations were in that part of the world. And the script is like nondescript town in America, so you could play anywhere. So it was Regina worked perfectly for us.
Now, what? No, how would this lead? So, how long were you? First, let me find a way to start clear myself up here. How long did you work on the first film together? How long was that project, and what sort of structure did you have for this? And did you kind of maintain a workflow together that after this film, or were you still working out, or like do you approach each movie differently than the one prior to?
Well, it was. This was. We've been like I was on the project before. Like I just remember, like I was doing a movie in Washington State, and as I was finishing that film, my agent called me and he said, "Yes, you got the film. We got to go to." So I had literally like a week after finishing movie in Washington to pack bags and go to Canada, and then we basically met and we prepped every day. I was actually a week late, and they already like found some locations before I got there. And I remember coming and not being super impressed with the locations. And so I talked honestly to Paul. I said, "Listen, the house is the main character. It's one of the characters of the film. I think we need to find something else." And they had something else, but they were afraid it's too small. I saw the house and I was, yes, this is the one. It's not small. It's never too small. If it works, if it's a character, we'll find a way.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's where I realized, yeah, Paul is he's just like, he was open to collaboration, and he trusted my vision that it's going to work, and it worked, and it really made a difference. I mean, the house that we found, it was perfect for the character and for what's happening with her and her descent into hell, so to speak. So So that was good. And then later on, working with Paul, basically, we did, like it was just after that film, we basically stayed very close. What was interesting about that film that we realized that we're both like solution oriented. We don't panic. We don't like like what happened in that script. We actually had to like producer came to us and he said like, listen guys, unfortunately we're gonna have to cut the day from production. And it's like for any filmmaker, it's like that's devastating.
Yeah.
But Paul and I remember just looking at it and he goes, okay, we'll get back to you. And so we basically like said, okay, fuck it, let's figure it out what we're gonna do. And instead of like, we didn't complain for a second, we'll come back with a plan. And so we did. We finished the day and we figured out, we got the producers together and decided like that our Adam Green, and he would direct like certain things that we would just divide the units into two. So we were shooting something else and we gave it to Adam to do other things. And it worked out great. So instead of panicking and losing energy, like being angry, we actually found a solution. And I don't think anyone knows that we had we had to cut the day from already like super short schedule, which was only 7. It was supposed to be 18 days, but it was 17 days. So,
how many pages did you have to shoot?
Well, I mean, if it was like 90, if it was like a 90-page script, then just see how many. A lot, I guess.
Yeah, 90 in 18 days. You didn't sleep much. That's crazy. Having a date cut from set. Oh, that's tight. That's tight.
Yeah, I was very, very tight, and it was shooting on film, so you have to shoot and then process the film and see the dailies the next day. So it was literally no sleep, because you just have to watch all the dailies to make sure that everything is good. If you need to reshoot something that you can't get, and so. But yeah, I'm very proud of that film still. I love the story, as I said, and I love that kind of story. So it's like Grace was one of the films that if I didn't make the film, I would love to watch, So I'm very, very proud of that film still. And then after that film, we stayed tight and we were planning, like if you knew that we have a project together, we would prep many, many days ahead of time,
Well, what do you think allows you to work together so well, you and Paul?
I think Paul and I, we understand each other really well. What I love about Paul is basically that he doesn't want to hear only like my suggestions about cinematography, but like we talk about the story, about the structure, about characters, about so many different things, and he's always open to hear something new. He's never, there's no ego with him, and he's never angry if you say something that like that will make the story better. He will listen and he goes like, oh, okay, I see where you're coming from. Or he would just say like, no, I don't agree. And so you can have completely open conversation without any ego involved, which is the only way really to get the best things. And I mean, when we did Bullethead, for example, that's the film that he wrote and we produced it. We actually, that was very interesting how that film came about. Do you guys want to talk about?
Oh yeah, of course. Now? I mean,
the time or
well, yeah, we've got time for it. I mean, Bullethead. I thought Bullethead was a really interesting story because it's like once it establishes itself and you get into, it's like, I don't know, it's got components of other stories, like it's got a very Reservoir Dogs kind of warehouse setting, but then with the dog in that sort of curve to it, and then you're kind of building on it a little bit. It's Paul and you have this unique way of being able to build a story. I'll say, I don't want to digress too far, but like even with like Tread, like as a documentary kind of builds for itself. So yeah. I like how the momentum goes in Bullethead, but it's also consolidated. So it looks like you all had time to work with a really like tight team and really be able to focus on the intricacies of that. Am I correct in that?
Yes, you're totally correct. I mean, like we actually wanted to do something for like, we just wanted to make films, and with Paul, it was like, I found a partner that I can just like help him produce, help him make the films. Like I want his writing to be the best he can. So it was always like testing, the writing, testing our ability to bring the stories to other people. So basically, like I since I'm from Serbia, and I never worked in Serbia, but prior, a couple of years prior to doing a bullet head, I got invited by a friend of mine from Belgrade who's got a huge production company, Miloš Đukilić, to shoot some commercials with him.
Okay.
And since I never worked in Serbia, I was very curious to go and work there. And I was blown away by the people, the technical skills, the equipment, the locations. So when I came back to LA, I said, like, hey, Paul, why don't we just why don't we do something? Let's figure out a way to do something in Serbia, because it's cheaper and like, you know, people are great and I have like good friends there. So basically, we met with Miloš in Venice. He came to LA. We met him in Venice one day, and through Paul's manager, we met the investor. And what we decided to do, basically, like Paul, it was a Paul's manager idea, is like basically to do a trailer for the film, to do like a proof of concept.
So you're like, you're almost like doing like a pitch and a treatment via like actually filming it, though.
Yes.
Wow, that's
yes.
interesting.
And through the proof of concept, we would go and pitch it to the studios. So basically, this our investor basically was willing to put some money in it, and we talked to Miloš. We made a budget, and we decided to shoot it in Serbia. I think we costed around $100,000, but Paul wrote a trailer based on the feature film that he's already written, and which original title was Brick Shit House. Then that evolved into De Niro.
All right.
That evolved into De Niro, which is the name of the dog.
Yeah.
And so we went out to do De Niro trailer, and it was amazing. It was just amazing, like for Paul to write that, and the way he wrote it, it really wrote it as a trailer, and every single dialogue in that trailer is like what he wrote. So. And we went out and shot it. We shot for 7 days. We had a dog. We had like amazing locations. We had a like top Serbian actors acting in it. And after finishing it, Paul, with some context, went out to Millennium Films, and they were blown away. And they offered us money to make a film, which actually turned to be a bullet head.
So but now when do you get the cast involved? Because you had to be pretty tight in picking the cast here, but you have the characters are particular. So where do Rory Calkin, John Malkovich, and Adrian Brody kind of team up here for you in your mind? I know Banderas is in there, but he's almost removed at points. So how do you decide on that core group of those people that you wanted to use, especially given that you've worked with Malkovich and Brody before?
So what happened basically, like Millennium Studio, they have a very very lucrative studios. They have their offices in LA. They shoot all over the world, but their main studio is based in Sofia, Bulgaria. Okay. And I've done with them before. I've done Warring for them, and I shot that movie in Washington, Lies and Illusions, with Christian Slater and Cuba Gooding Jr. in Washington with them too. And the good thing about them, it's like they do tight budgets, but they always have a great cast. Yeah. They don't go out to make a movie without a good cast. And when I was doing, I did a movie summer. We started like Bullet Head in fall of 2016. And that summer I shot a movie with John Malkovich, Supercon in New Orleans. Yeah. And I remember like being like completely in awe, knowing that John Malkovich is going to be in this film. I was like, man, I'm going to work with John Malkovich. But I heard from Paul that his contacts in Millennium told him that they are negotiating with John Malkovich to be in the film. So one day after a couple of weeks of working with John, I approached him. I said, hey, John, I wanted to ask you, like, I was told that you loved the script a friend of mine wrote. And he goes, which script? And I told him, and he goes, oh, yeah, I love that script. I still have it on my desk. And I was like, man, this is amazing news. Like, it's happening, because it happened that it passed already a year has passed since we finished the trailer, and nothing happened. Almost a year and a half. And, we knew that the studio wanted to do the film, but they were waiting for the cast. So that was great. So I called Paul right away. I'm like, hey, man, I talked to John, and he knows the script, he loves it, and so it was like a real reason to celebrate,
Yeah.
And then after that, finishing that film in New Orleans, and like that summer that things got clear, we heard about that Adrian Brody was cast first, and then John was second, and then the rest of the cast came in. What happened with Antonio Banderas? Antonio Banderas actually was shooting a movie in Bulgaria at that time, and we got him. They told us like you can have him for like 3 days. So
So you worked it in.
yeah. So and Paul was like, man. So he went on writing, and he wrote the big monologue scene for Antonio. Expanded his part, and then Antonio, of course, killed it completely.
Yeah, because that's tight though. 3 days, because you had the action scene at the end. You got a lot of the stuff going on right there at the end. How does, especially like the special effects when like the dog like bites him in the neck and shit. Like did you all sleep then? How did you get that done so quickly? Because you execute it well. It's perfect.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, like we had a great technicians working with us. Everybody was up to task, so things were just happening, great lighting crew, great production crew, great makeup, visual effects, everything. Everybody was up to task. So we prioritized, we just shot everything with him.
Did you have a real dog? You had a real dog most of the time, right?
Yes, we had 2 dogs. They're super cute. They're from Hungary. They brought them with a trainer, and they were amazing. Both of them were just like they're brothers, like twins. So we had one. Yeah, one was like less aggressive. The other one was more aggressive. So we sporadically used them for different things. And then when one would get tired, we would use another one and things like that. So yeah, but that turned out really well. I was happy, and like Paul is like. He was a dog trainer, and the part of the proceeds of that film went for like saving abandoned dogs and stuff like that. So it was definitely like anti dog abuse film, which I'm very proud of.
How did you focus on the scene where you're shooting from the dog's perspective? What were you doing with the lenses and stuff? Are you like having focus, because there's a lot of blur and there's obviously quick navigation of the camera and stuff there. So it's like gimbal work, and then you're kind of pulling focus deliberately in and out. What were you doing there?
That's a great question. We actually wanted, because in Grace we used the swing and tilt lenses, and we love that look. Which is, I don't know if you remember watching Grace, but there was a lot when she starts losing her mind. We would, with the swing and tilt lens, we would like tilt the left or right side of the frame, and like that we would kind of like try to get into her head and show her slow descent into madness. But for this, we wanted something. We wanted to do something else, not to copy that. But we were inspired actually by what Roger Deakins did in the assassination of Jesse James.
Okay, I've seen you're talking with what's that? And Brad Pitt and Casey Affleck?
Well, they called it Deakinizer, yeah.
Yeah, the Deckinizer. Okay, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but we went actually to Otto Nemetz, the house that made that device for John, and I worked with them many times. They're friends, and they basically they had this device, but it wasn't there. But they told us the principle of how like what was the idea of it, and coming, once we found out that we're in Bulgaria, we found out that they have a Živko, which was the guy who ran their lens department, and he was pure genius basically. So we explained to him what we wanted to do, and the idea is very simple. You use like a prime lens. In this case, we use a 20mm prime lens.
Okay.
And then you take a front element of some large lens. In this case, it was a zoom, just a front element, which is concave, right?
All right.
And then you take it out, and then you turn it upside down, and then you look through the camera, and then you see the distance you want to position it. And like that, you can determine like how much of the focus you want to have in the front, and how much the sides are going to go out of focus. So we did a few things with the lens guy Živko basically, and what he did basically, he created the whole rig with the movement that you could do with the remote focus. You could move it left and right, the lens, and you can So he basically made a perfect device. And like that, we could control the amount of autofocus. We could control if you want to look left or right and stuff like that. And got like a super unique, very, very unique, actually, look that I haven't seen before. So
he's like
very proud of
attached to
him.
like, so you're saying that he's attaching the lens movement to the follow focus, and you're able to like remote move the gears that way. So he's like built like an
Exactly.
additional gear system.
Exactly.
That's some wild
Yes.
shit. That's awesome.
He had, yeah, he had to build additional gears. He had to put them together. He had to like and to make them, instead of like focusing going around, to go like when you move the follow focus, he would go left and right.
Yeah.
So he really put some time into it, but it's a great device. They still have it in Bulgaria.
Nice.
And actually, the anecdote, like I shot a movie like 2 years later in Serbia, this English film, and the Coffee Wars. And we needed it. I wanted to use it for some scenes, and they sent it. We sent the driver from Belgrade. He drove down to Sofia and picked it up, and we used it again. So
nice.
Yeah, but that was really cool. I think it played also like, because the dog was like, it was a. I love that, Bullet Head is. I love it. I love it a lot because like every character in that film has a story, and the overall story was a dog story, and through his point of view, you see the world, like through all our other characters' flashbacks, we see their world and their state of mind and who they really are. It's basically for when we did the Bullet Head, why I like working with Paul, because he's open for like, his only concern is like to make the story better. And reading the script, all the Adrian Brody's character and John Cusack's character, John Malkovich's character, they had all flashback story, but the kid didn't have a flashback story. And I thought like it would be cool that he also has a flashback story about the dog. So I told him the story that happened to my mom. It's a very similar story that happened to my mom. Which is, if you watch the film, you know what happened to the little boy, and Paul basically listened to that story, and he was like, he loved it, and he basically he wrote a version of that story, and that story is in the script now. So, which is great. And
so somebody stomped your grandfather like stomped your mom's dog. That sucks.
Well, it wasn't like the story basically goes that my mom was a little girl, and they had a dog called Musa, and it was already blind and very old, and so her father basically told her like, okay, come with me, you gotta hold him while I kill him.
Oh God, that's dramatic.
She was, so she was crying, but he was like, you got to come with me. So she basically went with him. He hit him on the head, and the dog stayed there. And they thought he was dead, so they just left him in the forest. And then they came back home, but the dog came back following them. He was like all fucked up, and his eyes were out. But he found a way home, and that traumatized my mom. So the grandfather took the dog back and killed him again. But that traumatized my mom so much that I remember she was telling me the story that I was a kid and I was crying, and even now I have like tears coming to just thinking about it. But the Paul made a more cinematic version of that story, and for the film.
God, that's traumatic.
I'm not sure if
hell though. That's
crazy.
Yeah. No, I'll incorporate that into this for sure. But even let me stay on the air with it really quick now. So how when this is explained to Rory, how is Paul telling him to, or did you write this in earlier? This comes up on set like during the shoot. You're like, look.
No, he wrote it in the process. Like once when we knew that we had a financed that we're gonna have like John Malkovich in the movie.
Yeah, and
we were kind of like Paul. We had open conversation about everything. Like that's what Paul and I usually do. We go through the process of like, as we work on the shots, we go through the script, and then everything that kind of like stands out, we talk about it. Every little thing that you question in the script, or that you put yourself in the audience's head and think about it, you bring it up and you talk about it, and then that's what we brought. My thinking was that Rory's character needs a flashback, that he needs something, that we need to humanize him a little bit, so he's not just like this junkie, but that he has like a traumatic event from his childhood that made him who he is. So then I went on and I said, like, hey, like, listen, this is what happened. This is my mom's real story about what happened to her, and it was that she was a little girl, and then her father ordered her basically to go with him into the forest and help him like hold the dog while he kills him with an axe. And that's what my mom did, and that traumatized her for the rest of the life. But Paul basically, like, he liked the story. He liked the idea of what event like that could do to a young soul, and then he adapted it. And he said, "Okay, man, I'm gonna write it." He wrote it and he sent it to me, and I loved that. I like what he's written and how he actually played in the film.
Now, when
it's one of my favorite scenes.
When you it gives the character a lot of depth, and it pulls into it, because he settles into it. He kind of surprises the arrogance of Adrian Brody and John Malkovich's character in that scene, and it
exactly, yeah.
Now with real quick to communicate, but now when you communicate back with Paul, I mean, I'm sure this varies with director to director, but specifically with Paul, do you all storyboard together, or do you do shot list, or you just go with the fucking flow? How does it work? I'm sure there's some organization being that you work on large productions, but how is that?
Yeah, we do the shot list for a lot of things. We do the shot list, but for example, for like the bus sequence in the Bullet Head, the bus sequence when Adrian gets chased by the dog, we storyboarded the whole thing, and then we did that. We started storyboarding that prior to going to Bulgaria. And then once we were in Bulgaria, we got a different storyboard artist and continue storyboarding that. That helped us a lot, like pre-visualizing and knowing, like, just to meet the time. But a lot of times we write the shots, we write the shot list. Sometimes Paul writes it on his own and then runs it by me, or sometimes we sit together and go through script and write shot list together, and which all help us prepare better. And like, then when it time comes to shoot, then you know exactly what you need to do. And many times it happens that we just change everything, but at least we have an idea of what we wanted to do, like clear idea. And sometimes, like you come to the set and you just have to throw everything away. But certain things you just leave. For example, for that scene with the bus, we decided that we're going to try to do it in one shot all the way until he gets into the bus. And that helped us, buy a lot of time, And we had a more time to play with the dog, because, like, having a dog on set is like, it's so unpredictable. You can't just tell the dog, come here and stay. It just has to be a team of people that is working on it. So like, that's why we were like, listen, we got to go through this really fast in order so we can spend the half of the day, like half a day just this and all the actions, and the half a day is just for the dog. So. But, by visualizing, pre-visualizing, writing, and drawing, then we know what we need. So, like, if you can get it in 2 shots instead of 5, then we go, okay, let's go for the minimalism. And sometimes, it's better like that.
When you shot Standoff, was the whole thing on set? Like, I mean, shot on location.
Standoff.
On location.
Yeah, Standoff was an interesting. Adam is an incredible writer. I mean, when I read that script, I was just blown away. Like, I thought it was, because a lot of people write the script just to confine it into the environment, but this film was like, it was perfect for the one house. It was just like, this is why it's in the one house. And but with Adam was like, he's like, this was his first film, and he wanted to be super well prepared. So what we did basically. We did picture boards. Our entire prep process was like, we found a house we shot that in Ontario, Canada, and we actually picture boarded everything. He acted a guy, and we had another PA acting.
He's the younger guy, isn't he, in the movie? Actually,
yeah, he was Carter. Yeah, he was Carter, and And we actually picture boarded. I had my still camera, and we were taking pictures of every single shot on every single setup. And then we created, like, we had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of photographs. And then we would create like a document, which was the script. It was like almost like a comic book, but with the pictures. So it was instead of storyboards, it was a picture board.
All right,
And and we were very faithful to our shots. Basically, like, we didn't think too much how to frame or what to do. We already had everything. We already done that work in prep, so it was just putting the camera in the right place and keep going, because that was also like I think it was a 4-week shoot, which was very fast.
There's a lot of dialogue in it too. So I mean, you're literally spending, like, you spent time in that house with Lawrence Fishburne. I mean, so they what, you just shoot half of it upstairs and then half of it downstairs? I mean,
yeah, we would shoot like exactly half of it upstairs, half of it downstairs. We tried to shoot as much in continuity as possible, so we would go back and forth.
Oh, okay.
And he had that one beautiful shot of two of them together, which I really like. One of my favorite shots. But yeah, we would go up and down just to keep continuity, because I think it's always better. But yeah, Lawrence was very interesting. He basically said, like, that's the meanest character that he's ever gotten to do. So that's why he wanted to do it.
It's pretty gritty when he wanted to kill a kid, and he's relentless with it.
Well, I'm going to ask you some more questions about Bullethead later, but I want to know, so already in your career, you've worked with many well-known actors and quite a few that aren't as recognizable to the general movie-going public. So what I want to know is, were there any differences that stood out to you when working with, well, let's say an experienced actor versus someone who's still working to solidify their presence in the film world?
That's a excellent question. That's an excellent question. I think every actor should, like, listen carefully to this, because especially actors coming up, a lot of young actors, they're not realizing that they're acting for the film. And you can tell how inexperienced they are by the way they position themselves, by the way they're not aware of camera at all.
Yeah.
The biggest difference between an experienced and experienced actors, that the experienced actors, they know the camera, they know the lenses, and the only time they act is when the camera is looking at them, when the camera is rolling, when it matters. Even like I'm working with John Cusack, it was amazing, because I remember doing his over the shoulders, and somehow you could see his face, and I was thinking, damn, this guy's good.
He knew how to position his head.
He just knows to. Yeah, he just knows how to position himself to like be on the camera, even when he's not on the camera. Like, even if it's just over his shoulder.
Yeah, I got one.
And that makes my work as a cinematographer much easier, because then they ask you what's the lens, and then usually they adjust their acting to what the lens is. So if it's a closer lens, they're gonna act differently than if it's in the wide shot. So if it's like, and notice that with all of them, with Gary Oldman, with every big actor worked, like they just show you with a hand gesture, like, where are you in the shot? Is it like the collarbone, or like, is it thing? I said it's wide. He goes, okay, and then they adjust their performance to that. So I think like all the young actors, they should go like, and if they're not classes, they should find classes for the camera and to learn how to play for the camera.
That makes sense. And like, so really, like, do you shoot primarily with zoom or with primes? I'm assuming primes probably in today's world.
Well, it's these days, we're shooting like with a lot of things with two cameras. So what I'm trying to do basically is, like, I try to have like A camera on the prime lens and then B camera on the zoom. But that can change also, depending. Sometimes if you want to use the zoom, you can then I put it on the A camera. And I don't know if you're familiar with the work of Ken Russell. Ken Russell is a British director who did The Devils and Gustav Mahler and Crimes of Passion and Altered States.
I am, but not to a degree where I can like talk to you well about it. So you're teaching me now, so I'm going to listen.
He actually did this movie Gustav Mahler in the 70s, which was like full of zooms. The camera was zooming everywhere, like in and out. And I did actually his last movie in Canada. It's called Trapped Ashes, and that's where I worked with 5 different directors in the film. And he was one of the directors. The other one was Sean Cunningham, who did Friday the
Yeah.
13 and Monte Hellman, two-lane blacktop, and basically Ken was very, he liked to use the zoom lens to accent stuff, and I'm very flexible with that stuff. As I said, my style changes depending on the director I work with, for better or for worse. I'm not sure, but I find certain joy in that. Try to do different things basically, and the one thing that I learned from Ken is basically he said, like, all my stars are always center punched, and that was something that I was like, damn, that's a very interesting point. Like, that's how you can always know who's the star of his film.
Yeah.
Is by the way it frames it. There's a certain things that he does. But to come back on the zooms are nowadays people don't use them a lot. But sometimes if you need to accent things, you use the zoom. If you need, like, because the zoom is an unnatural move. But another thing that if you sometimes when you watch the movies and you see those moves, constant moves, people do those zooms in post, which is,
like
I actually think, I find it worse than using a real zoom, because then when you use the real zoom, then there is a filmmaker's attention to that, But nowadays, a lot of people are using digital zooms because they want to speed up the story, they want to make it more dynamic, and then they zoom in digital in a picture, which is a little bit annoying, in my opinion.
I'm with you. It seems like it's kind of disastrous in a way. Like, for instance, to me, now I'll give you an example where, say you're shooting on the run, right, and you have a really minimal crew, right? You're working really small people, so getting the structure of like a moving shot, like a steady cam or a gimbal setup, is going to really be a pain in the ass because of the time it's going to take you to get everything ready to go. So if you revisit movies like from the 70s, I won't draw anything out specifically, but if you revisit the usage of zooms, I mean, even in television, like, because we'll talk about the Munsters later, and I know in a lot of the 60s episodes, there is a lot of usage of zoom there, at least in what I'm seeing. I might be wrong in that, but it seems to compensate for movement in a way. So, like, say if you really need to be able to make the shot move a lot without having to actually move the camera itself, say you're on a tripod, that to me seems like the best usage of a zoom in the past, is kind of being able to get, like, say if you have someone walking and and they're walking a long distance and you're kind of getting a conversation and you can kind of draw at them where it's really subtle. Dave Inslee talked to me a little bit about pulling zoom back before the use of Steadicam, and that's what he seemed to describe as, like, there was a way of subtly not pulling zoom, but taking a zoom and shot, and it seemed to be like a way to subtly do it where it wasn't so obnoxious, like you're saying, in your face. It kind of just captures the movement. Am I right in that, or?
Yes, you are, and also when the zoom came up as any new technology, when people jump on it and they just you want to use it, so they're like, wow, look at this! I can go from wide shot to like a close up in, like, without moving the camera, and I can just save time doing that. So I guess people were just mesmerized by the technicality of it, But nowadays, I think we look at it more like a lazy filmmaking rather than expediting,
I understand.
But it's interesting, like how the things are changing. I mean, when you watch I was watching recently, like, Francis Ford Coppola commentary on The Godfather, and I didn't even realize, like, that movie doesn't have much dolly, doesn't have much movement. A lot of that movie is just static shots.
Yeah.
But you don't even notice that. There are a couple of, like, dolly shots, and they're very, very distinguished. And Francis was saying that Gordon Willis was like, he didn't like, he liked really precise shots. He didn't like to move much, but somehow I guess you don't miss it, or like, if it works, why fix it, right? So just coming back to the zoom thing, just because you have something doesn't mean you have to use it. I would say that in today's world, we use it more as a variable prime rather than as a device.
That's what I feel like you're talking about with those Angies, how you can basically go from, like, you can move from 18 to 45 pretty easily. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly, without having to change the lens. So like when you're time crunch, when you have to, like, shoot a lot of stuff in a short time, zoom seems like a great option, because you can just change the lens by zooming in and then moving the camera to find a better shot, rather than changing the lens and because every lens change, no matter how fast it is, it takes some time. So using it as a variable prime is a great thing. But I always have like two zooms in my in the package, and I never go out to make a film without the zooms, even anamorphic. Because sometimes you can hide it really well if you have like a slide movement to the right and then zoom it in slowly. It just seems like, oh, you don't even notice that you're moving the camera.
Yeah,
that is
it
a zoom.
complements
You can
it.
say like exactly, it complements it, extends the movement rather than. So it's not just a optical zoom, but it's a part of the physical moving closer, and then optical just adding a little bit to it. So it's a great tool. It's a great tool if you use it correctly.
Now, back on talking about the experience of working with certain people, because we talked a bit about actors and their experience, especially relative to the understanding of the camera, and we could go a while on that. But what about working with the director? Say you're working with a newer director, like when you worked with Roxanne Dawson on her directorial debut, or when you're working with someone like Paul, who you're very, got a lot of vibe with, a lot of good synergy, or someone who's got more experience, but you're working with them more directly as a cinematographer. I don't know. I mean, maybe Rob Zombie fits that mold. Is there someone else that fits that mold better, probably, that you've worked with? I don't know, because I feel like Rob still more. It seems like he would be more of a mutualist collaborator. So, what is it like working with directors based on their experience? Is what I'm getting to. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing. I did a TV film called the Drew Peterson story, The Untouchable, with Mikhail Solomon, and he's a several-time Academy Award nominated cinematographer who actually turned to director, and that was interesting experience, I have to say, because it was, he shot Abyss for James Cameron, and he shot a film for Spielberg, and he worked with Ron Howard in several films. So he's like a top cinematographer, and that was very interesting. I learned a lot from him.
Well, if he worked with, not to
knew,
hold you, but with Abyss, you mentioned The Abyss. That was one of the most difficult films I've ever read about working on. Like, it sounded like Cameron was difficult, the process was difficult underwater. So what is his advice then for stuff like this?
Man, he was just saying like it was a hell to work on that film, but and it was very difficult. The Jim was like, he was talking about Cameron being very not easy to work with, but basically like working with Mikhail was difficult and very easy at the same time, because he would come in and he goes like, you see, when I do the blocking, I do it all the time for the camera. So he basically knows everything so well that he goes like, when he does the blocking, I know exactly like why he did it, because he's leaving this part for lighting.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it was very easy to work with him, because I didn't have to like say, hey, listen, I need this for lighting, or sometimes you have to talk to director like that. It would look better from here because it's for lighting. It was just like, oh, we understood each other without even talking. But he was very demanding, and he would push me. Like, he would push my creativity. He was really keeping me on my toes, I have to say, which I'm grateful for him for that experience today. But it wasn't easy to work with him. But I think he made me better cinematographer, just going through that boot camp,
Yeah.
Yeah. He was something else, but a great director, and as I said, amazing cinematographer. He had some good idea. He did not intervene much in the lighting, but sometimes he would go like, I think we should do it like this, and he was actually quite gentleman, actually, and he was very gentle in pushing his ideas, which I kind of appreciated. So. But the great director, he learned a lot from him about it was a TV film, very tight schedule, 15 days, but the movie looks so good. And then remember he calling me like when there were ASC awards, and he goes, man, let's apply this film for this ASC awards. It looks great. I'm very proud of it. So we did. We didn't get award. We didn't get nominated, but still, I mean, he kept in touch. And then later on, he sent me an email. He saw the Breakthrough at the DGA screening, and he sent me an email and complimented my work on it, which was really nice of him.
Well, let's talk about Breakthrough. Now, since lead actor Marcel Ruiz wasn't actually submerged in the scenes where he's in the water, how How are these ideas to create the scene where he's submerged in the water formulated in pre-production and then developed later on set?
Yes, that film was interesting because Roxanne is so creative, and they accepted all her creative ideas. She actually wanted to start the film like that,
And it's her directorial debut,
all
right?
her
So this is like a good experience.
that was her.
Example of someone working.
Yeah, that was her first feature film. She directed a lot of TV,
Okay.
and she came as a super experienced TV director and an actress, of course. But this was her first feature film, and she had great creative ideas. I remember at our first meeting, she was just basically telling me all these great ideas, and her lookbook was excellent, and yeah. So she wanted basically to start like with the body kind of falling down, and then like the seeing the sun, and then like covering the sun and coming down, and then passing the camera and drifting all the way down. So basically, the way we did it, it was a Canadian company who did the visual effects, and we did it on a soundstage. And the water was created digitally, but all the interactive lighting was actually what we did. So the water, the actual texture of the water is digital. The light is, we had 2 light sources, basically with 2 cranes. There was one crane that was holding Marcelo on the wires and pulling him and kind of lowering him down. The camera was on techno crane that was traveling in the opposite direction. So he was descending as the camera was booming up. And we had 2 light sources that one was hitting the lens and the other one was lighting Marcelo. And they were moving heads, basically. They were just the moving lights that we did some tests. We found a local company who sourced them, and that movie was shot also in Canada, in Winnipeg. And we tested we programmed the waves, the water waves, on this light source, and we lit scene just with those 2 light sources. And the final result is beautiful. I don't know what you guys think, but I really loved it. I thought it was great.
Oh yeah,
I thought it was beautiful.
Well, it's incredibly. It's incredibly dynamic. Like it takes so much to put a scene like that together. I mean, how do you incorporate? I think it's maybe this is a decent question to ask in asking how do you work with the special effects crew on something like this? So like when cinematographers, especially going into the world of CGI where there's a lot of this probably applies a lot in clean with the action scenes at the end too. I'm assuming how do you work with the special effects team and the video effects to really get something like this done? Say where you're simulating the water. I'm sure are you working on the frame rates in a particular frame rate to make the wind work well with the clothes and the orientation there?
Yes, exactly. We shot in slow motion. I can't remember. I think it was 48 frames. And then we had fans that were blowing up his hair and his wardrobe to make it look like it's a water. And we had an amazing visual effects supervisor from the Canadian company. I can't recall the name. But they did. They did that movie, Del Toro's movie about that take place in the water, Shape of Water.
Okay.
Yeah, they already had the experience working with dry for wet, basically, and it's always good to have a visual effects supervisor on set when you're doing any kind of visual effects work, either if it's doing the water work, or if you have a set extensions, or if you have any kind of like camera movement with the set extensions, because they can be very, very helpful. I mean, they can tell you like how to put the camera, where to put the marks and everything like that. So in today's world, I think it's more and more, it becomes like, I mean, even in the Bullet Head, we had some set extensions all over the place. We were replacing the city. We were adding skyscrapers. We were adding neighborhoods behind like in that shot when Antonio Banderas comes and realizes that they are loading when he sees them for the first time, when he shoots at them, like that was on the soundstage basically. And we had a big green screen behind him in which they added the city in the background. So, but having a visual effects supervisor with us the whole time really helps, opens up a new creative ideas. But it's also like like another thing that is very important about visual effects is, like, as they say, the least visual effects, it's the better. So like more stuff you can do interactively, the better, you know. So having said that, that's why we did a lot of like interactive lighting in the breakthrough, instead of like having visual effects to do the lighting on the guy, because that always looks fake. So the best combination is always manual and digital.
Do you have to? Do you have to work?
Combining with another.
Do you? I know some
Sorry?
cinematographers work in, like, do some work in post and have interest in editing and stuff. Do you have any interest in that end of things? Do you ever do any work in post with any of the production?
No, I don't do any post work. I do for myself. I you know, like I did a couple of music videos that I shot, directed, and edited, and I edit my own stuff. But no, I don't do any other. Like I just go, like, you know, they consult me for the color and for other things. But physically, I don't do any kind of post work. No.
Well, when shooting War Inc., I know that it doesn't have anything to do with Breakthrough. Was there any incentive to match the aesthetic of John Cusack's film Grosse Point Blank, since critics have described it as appearing as something of a sequel?
Yes and no. I mean, actually, Grosse Point Blank, it was just a destroy structure in which he talks to camera and stuff like that. But it wasn't. It was a different movie. It was a completely different film. So I didn't use that as a reference, if that's the question. It was more War Inc. John mentioned it a couple of times, but he didn't want to get married. He didn't want to, like, people to think that that's exactly the same film he's making, you know?
Yeah.
So it was a different film.
So that makes sense with the.
But that film, yeah, but that film had the original director left, and then they brought another director, and that was also shot in Bulgaria. We built like an Iraqi street there, and I thought the script was really funny, and there was something interesting on that film that was shot on film, and because it was this kind of like a fantasy story, almost, but satire, right?
Yeah.
I actually used very heavy filtration on it, and I used this filter that actually was handmade, and it was used vintage stocking. Dior stocking were used.
Okay.
So I had actually I had a guy made it for me, like three of them in Los Angeles, shipped them to Bulgaria, and we used it in front of the lens. People put them sometimes in the back because the effect is less visible, but I put it on the front because I wanted to get a lot of flares, and I wanted to get a lot of those artifacts happening in front of the film. And I had a support from John, so I went all the way in, and it was an interesting look.
What was it difficult to work with that look, to like actually capture it when you're in process?
It wasn't difficult because you can see through the you can see the effect right away. So you can see, like, actually kind of like you can see the final result right away.
Okay, so you're basically, when you're looking at the monitor, you're seeing it exactly as it's going to look, as opposed to like looking.
Yeah, you exactly, not 100% because that was shot on film. So monitor is more reference than anything else, you know.
I understand.
But you can like, with the experience, you can tell, like, oh, this is how it's going to look. So and you know, having that filter and wanting to have a lot of flares, I would put a lot of like light objects in the frame that would refract the light, that it would flare, that it would like they would have like in the deep background, you know, have like a super sharp lights, and all that would create this kind of like halo effect around the highlights, which is really pretty, but not for every film, for sure.
Well, now, a great deal of the work you've done has taken place during and after the industry transitioned from film to digital format. So, how did this impact your career and knowledge when it came to cinematography?
Yes, that was a very interesting thing. Around the War Inc., actually, is like when the Red camera came out, and I remember like thinking, man, it would be so great to try this, and it has both of them. They have advantages and disadvantages, but I would have to say, in today's world, there's no reason, if you're looking for like a clean looking film, good looking film, there's no reason to go back to film. Digital is so good these days that it's amazing. It's in many ways it's better than film. But film, having said that, film, if you want to do stuff like when I earlier mentioned, working with Gary and trying all these different film stocks, let's say if you want to get the effect of Saving Private Ryan, which is like, or movie Seven, I don't know if you technically know, but let's say both of those films, they did a skip bleach process, which is actually, which is like during the development, you skip bleaching, so you leave all the extra silver on the film, which makes the blacks really black, makes the grain really grainy, and makes the highlights really like bright. Then you just do skip bleach process. I mean, people do all that kind of stuff in digital these days, but it's never the same when you can control the amount, when you can see it and you can control it, because the beauty of film was like when you do those things in film, you don't know how it's going to look like. You don't know with certainty how it's going to turn out, So there is like this a small percentage of unpredictability that makes it look amazing or makes it like completely fail, I remember meeting I remember meeting at one of the award ceremonies. I met the cinematographer Harry Saviris, who shot The Game for David Fincher, and he passed away unfortunately recently. But he shot The Birth with Nicole Kidman. Basically, he is known for like really daring stuff and like underexposing for 3 or 4 stops, and then basically I said, like how do you do that? We were standing in line to walk into the, and I introduced myself and said, hey Harris, how the hell do you do that? Like, I mean, isn't it scary to do it? And he goes, yeah, but you get the production on your side, and then you can do it. And he told me that I can't remember which movie, but he goes like, 30% of the film we had to reshoot because it was too dark. So,
shit.
but that's a beauty shooting on film. You don't know how it's going to turn out, and once when it's like on that level, you can't fix it anymore. So you end up with a palette that is actually very unique and very. That's why some of those films that were shot on film. That's why in today's world, a lot of films look very similar, because they're using the same films and lights. But back in the day, I think there was not that much variety, but some of the cinematographers are really pushing the envelope, and that's where you get like, I mean, you got like Janusz Kaminski and all his work. A lot of stuff that he's done was like ski bleach and whatnot. So, but yeah, like just the long story short, film is great, digital is great too, but I wouldn't go back to film.
How about
because it's just immediate,
Was it loading? Yeah. What about like the loading process of working on set? How does that vary? Is there stress, or like instead of loading film or pulling cans now, you're dealing with these like 1 terabyte codex cards, and you have to have the read and write speeds correct in order to get this stuff offloaded in an adequate amount of time. And the information can be huge, I mean, if you're shooting in a higher resolution or in 4K or something on an area or something, that you're shooting like 10 minutes, 20 minutes, one of these things can start to fill up after, well, maybe more like an hour. Yeah. But how does that factor into your load and offload times on set with film and digital? Is it easier now? I have no understanding of how that worked with film, so I'm asking from kind of like
with film. And you had to have like with film you had to like have a dark room and like assistants who would bring in the film, and like people who would transport it to the lab right away, or if you're on a remote location, you had to FedEx it and ship it. So the expenses were huge. But with digital, I'm not saying it's much cheaper, but because you still have to have a huge personnel, like we have to have a DIT and we have to have assistant DIT. Those are the people who basically, once when the camera is loaded, when the card is loaded, then basically gives it to the assistant DIT who backs it up, and then those backups stay in the truck and production takes care of it. So it's the same amount of people, but it's just I think it's easier than dealing with film. But it's still a lot of work because you have to like make a backups, and you have to like clean the cards, and you have to make sure. Like on Bullethead, it was the last take of the day, and it was John's birthday, and the take we did 2 takes, and the second take wasn't recorded on the camera, and he just went nuts. He
Uh-oh.
was like, he looked at the producer and he goes, man, the head should be rolling now.
Oh man. So what happened? What happened? Did the camera just max out? Did the card max? I hate when you hear the beep, you know you're up, you're like, "Oh shit." If it's in the middle of a take.
Well, what happened basically, we finished the take, and we were about to call wrap, and then the guy who checks the AC said, like, look, he came to us and he says, like, it didn't record, like something happened. It did not record the last take. The car didn't record the last take.
Yeah,
And we were like, oh, maybe we should do it again. And John was just getting ready. He had some friends in town, and they're waiting for him to go for dinner. And
he had to do it
he
again.
didn't want to stay.
How do you now? That's
Well, he did.
Go ahead.
He didn't want to stay. He's a super nice guy, and we became like very friendly, like shooting 2 films together, and even on that project. But he didn't want to stay. He just like he didn't want to do it again, and he just wanted to leave. And that's why he was like, "How can this happen? This is impossible. Les, the head should be rolling." And Paul basically said, he came to me and he goes, "What do you think? Like, how was the first take?" I said, "I think it was good." So basically, we made the decision, like, no, we're not going to do the second take. And that was it. We just did 1 take. And that's in the movie.
If you don't like it in post, remember, it was your choice. No. That's,
Exactly.
But how is it dealing with, because, there is kind of the undiscussed, and I don't want to put you on the spot here, but there is the undiscussed kind of notion on set of cast and crew. How is it dealing with the temperament of the cast? I mean, because, there is a lot of hurry up and wait. And especially with younger actors who have the more ideological view of making a movie, and then they get on set and they're like, I've got to do the same thing like 10 damn times from other views. How is it working with the temperament of actors?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there's so, like, young actors, usually they want to do a lot and they want to prove themselves, and everybody wants to do a good job once when they're on the set,
Yeah.
But some of them, they have different ideas and different ways of presenting themselves. I remember first time when I met John in New Orleans, I looked at the script that he brought with himself, and it was just like got embedded in my head. I've never seen anyone's script like that. It was like in different colors and different pages with folded differently, and it was just an artwork. I was mesmerized by the script. Having said that, the guy, he was so ready. He knew everything. There was not only that he knew everything about every character. And that was like that in Bulgaria too, and he had ideas. He was active participant. He didn't wait. He didn't wait to be told what to do. He was participating in. So it's a funny anecdote. At some point, like, it was so good. Like, but he would listen to Paul and me, and we would talk, and then he goes, "That's an interesting idea, but listen, what about this?" And we're like, "Okay, that's good. Okay, great. Let's do it." And then second, third, fourth time, and then at some point Paul comes to me and he goes, "Man, what are we gonna do? John is directing himself here." And I'm like, well, it's like amazing, So and I remember, like, Paul and I talked before, like, about what Gary told me about actors and stuff like that, and I reminded him. I said, like, just tell him, like, hey, listen, that's a great idea, but we'll do it. Let's shoot it like that, and then let's just shoot 1 take like this, So, and John was totally okay with that. So that was a good strategy, to let him do however he wanted to, or he would just listen to us talk, and then he would just see him do stuff. Like, I remember once we were trying to get into the scene, trying to figure out how to get it. There was like something happening outside. The police was coming, and then we cut to somewhere else, and then we had supposed to cut back to him. And Adrian in this space, and Paul and I were talking, and then you could, and then we hear the noise, and we see John just kicking like something on the floor, and Paul and I look at each other and go like, okay, this is how we're gonna do it. He would just, instead of telling us, he heard us talk and he just did it for us, and we were smart enough to go like, okay, that's what we're gonna do. We start with this. It's like,
it's an ebb and flow relationship. Like, I understand the one you're talking about with like those actors. Like, you have stronger actors who have ideas and have approaches to things, and sometimes they're worth listening to, and when they kind of incorporate it. And
Exactly. It's about, finding, for me, it's always finding a balance.
yeah,
and,
nice,
kind
like
of
a good medium
letting
for it.
people because you don't want to kill anybody's creativity. You want to actually be supportive, and you want to be. And that's what I learned from Paul also, like, because he's super supportive and he listens to people, and his is the final word, but he'll never kill your. He'll never kill your curiosity or your enthusiasm by saying, "Oh, that's a stupid idea," So it's a fine balance.
So, during post-production for the film Bad Country, which was released in 2014, director Chris Brinker suffered an aortic aneurysm that would prematurely end his life at the age of 42. Now, how did this tragedy impact you personally, having just spent a great deal of time working with Chris?
Yeah, that was so difficult. It took me years to actually come to terms with that, because it happened on set while we were doing the pickups in Venice. Because we shot the movie in Baton Rouge and in New Orleans. And also, not that I lived in the same house with Chris during the prep and during the production in Baton Rouge. I mean, he was such a big and generous guy, and he had his brother who was working the film, and his best friend from high school. They were his assistants, and we all lived in this house, and his families. And he asked me, he goes, "Well, you can go to any hotel, but I would really love if you're here." So we've developed really close friendship, and I got actually a job through Scott Einbinder, who's a producer of Grace. He recommended me for this film, and I went really well prepared to the meeting, and Chris offered me a job right away, which was amazing. And I mean, I don't know, it just reminded me of shortness of life, and on how like moments are precious and how things are not to be taken too seriously. It was just a tragic loss, because he was very talented. I loved the script, and I loved the way the film turned out, but he had a great ideas he had a huge fan base because of he produced the Boondock Saints,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how he got Willem Dafoe to be in the film, and the entire cast came to the movie because of the success of the Boondock Saints, or the financial success of the Boondock Saints. And this movie, he had millions of followers on the Facebook, and he actually wanted to make this film. He had the plans. He was like a super savvy businessman, and he wanted to make this movie big. He wanted to, he had a big hopes for the film. And then after him passing, basically, Sony finished the edit and went straight to DVD. But I still love the film, and I love the characters, and great fun memories of the film.
Yeah, how was it?
We shot
working
in
on set with? I mean, you had a pretty big cast there too, and like you said, he worked with he and Defoe had worked together before, so it wasn't like, even though you're working with a large cast, they're all familiar with each other and stuff. So how was that?
Yeah, it was. But that was great, because that was actually with Tom Berenger was in the movie too, and that was the first time Tom Berenger and Willem Dafoe worked together since the Platoon.
Yeah.
And
Was Willem
they
Dafoe
had a
upset
great
with him
laugh.
for killing him?
I know, we were all laughing about it, but it was fun because they had a fist fight at the end, and then Willem Dafoe bit the shit out of him. So that was his revenge.
Break even there. All right.
Yeah, but it was amazing, because it was like it was my first time with Tom Berenger, and such a great actor also, but he played this Cajun guy, and he brought the real Cajun, his friend, who spoke with the Cajun accent on set, and he would talk to him every day, and then he would pick up the accent. So he would act like a real Cajun French, with a French accent, and he's done it with ease, but it's not easy to do that kind of stuff. So
he's very much, for him, it's interesting to see the character acting that he does in the movie. It's really interesting to see it, because he's pretty removed from his traditional self, I would say.
Oh, totally, yeah. But it was also such a unique experience, because we were actually in Louisiana. We shot in the biggest prison in the world. We shot because what is his name? Not Matt Damon, Matt Dillon. Matt Dillon plays this white supremacist who is in prison, and he's released from prison and whatnot. And so we needed the prison scenes, but we ended up shooting 14 days in Angola, which is this huge prison in Louisiana, and that was like really amazing experience. Just on its own, we were staying in this golf course during the hurricane. We were like shut down for 3 days, and the trees were falling around us, and we were all hanging out. So yeah, it was like a big slumber party also. And that was the memories, fine memories of Chris Brinker and his contribution to filmmaking and to that film. I really recommend people watching that film.
Well, more recently, you acted as director of photography for the 2021 action film Clean, starring Adrian Brody. Now, we've already discussed your working relationship with Solet, but Clean is your second time working with Brody, who is also in the movie Bullethead. Now, hoping to set irony aside here, what has led to you and Paul collaborating with Adrian again?
Yeah, Clean was while we were shooting Bullethead, Clean and Adrian and Paul became very close, and Paul told me, he said, "Hey man, I'm talking to Adrian about writing a script with him. He's got this great idea. Maybe we can do the movie next year or the year after." And that's how it started. You know, they start talking while we were in Bulgaria, and they continue collaboration, writing the script together. And at some point, they found the money, they found financing, and decided to shoot a movie upstate New York, where Adrian in Utica, where Adrian has a property. He doesn't stay there often, but it's 2 hours from Canadian border, and really kind of like upstate New York. That was the first time for me shooting in the upstate New York, and very interesting place.
What time of year did you shoot up there? Because it gets cold.
Yeah, we were shooting there like November, December. I mean, we finished right before Christmas, so it was super cold. We spent the Thanksgiving there, and we shot the whole December there. So the conditions were brutal, but he actually added to the atmosphere of the film. Just anecdotally, you know, like I came there and we were shooting a lot. As we were scouting, I just loved the old city. You know, that was an old town that used to be like 100 something years ago. That was a candidate for the capital of New York, and it was a very industrial city. But now it's just faded. The whole industry is gone, and it's just like falling apart. You know. So I took a lot of like black and white photos, and I was talking to Paul, and we actually suggested to Adrian to like, what if we do this black and white film? What if we make it black and white? So we started shooting it as a black and white film. And
why'd you go to color?
Yeah, black and white is already abstracted from reality, you know, so it's already an art form on itself. So basically you have less things to distract you from the story. So I feel like you're more focused in the story. But and I thought we thought that this film could be a great black and white film, because it's a character piece. It's about the man and his descent into hell. And but it works in color too. I mean, I think it really works. And that was an interesting film, because unlike Bullethead, which we shot as with 2 cameras and with a big crew, this was more kind of in the world of Cassavetes film, you know, smaller film, smaller crew, all existing locations. We built only the house at the end, the living room at the end where the truck goes through.
Yeah.
And that was just for that effect of the truck going through the house, but everything else was real locations, like every single one.
Do you prefer shooting on location?
But I mean, it depends on the film, you know. Like locations, like I don't mind limitations, you know. I have to say, like I was watching documentary on YouTube the other day. Well, actually, it wasn't the other day. On Andy Warhol.
Yeah.
A couple of months ago, and he said something so interesting. He said, I would pay the most person, I would love to hire somebody, and I would pay him all the money in the world to tell me what to do. because you know, all these options, when I can do whatever I can do, I don't want to do anything. So I find that inspiring because in a way, like locations give you limitations, and when you have limitations, you narrow down your choices. So I like both. Working on the sound stage is different because then you can really explore and you can go big. But working on the locations, you have to accept certain choices and just stick with them. So, and that's like once you don't have so many choices, you don't have to think that much. But this film was that kind of a film. It was all location film, and we were lucky that we found such a unique location, like the church and the fish store and all the houses. I mean, they were so unique to that era and to that city. That you wouldn't find it anywhere else in the world. I mean, the church that we shot, and Michael is in the church. It was built in 1912 by the Italian immigrants from Bari, from the south of Italy, and all those saints and everything. We didn't add a single piece of furniture in that church. It was just authentic as it gets. But to come back to the style, we decided to shoot with one camera and to shoot for the shots rather than to shoot for coverage. So it was great. Adrian wanted me to operate the camera because we were like, he told me, man, I love when you operate the camera, because we had a Steadicam operator who was our operator too. But a lot of shots I operated and Adrian was just like super open for collaboration. I would tell him, right away, I would say like, hey, let's do it again without cutting, and I would say, this was good, let's do it again, I'm going to move the camera here, and then he would also say like, okay, that's great, so when I do this, you can pan this way. So it was just like a really great dance between camera and him, and very, very creative and satisfying process.
Yeah, he had a lot of personal interest and investment into the film, didn't he? I mean, he did a lot of like almost co-directing here and really personal involvement.
Yeah, well, he was a producer, he was a co-writer, and it was his story, So he really wanted to be the best he can be, He was very, very invested into this film. We were very lucky that. But he was super respectful to everyone and very respectful to Paul as a director. He had his own opinions, but he would let Paul decide and on a lot of things. So, yeah, it was very great. It was great working with him on this film.
Now, turn into the documentary Tread, because Tread is really interesting. The story behind it's interesting. And after I watched it, you got me watching other like rampage videos on YouTube of battle tanks going through neighborhoods and stuff. Anyway, so rabbit hole with it, but. How does Tread come along? Because it's this, the story, just for listeners, if they're not too aware of it, is it kind of backdates to 2004, and it deals with a citizen of Granby, Colorado, who builds basically this big bulldozer that's like a modified bulldozer and almost equivocal to a battle tank. And then he goes to get revenge on all of his enemies in this small town, people that are like the town leader or like head prominent family of the town, bad deals and whatnot. And this all ends poorly. Now, I'm really curious to ask some questions about this because there's a lot of like cinematic narrative in it as well. Now, you have documentary footage and whatnot, but I know that machine was destroyed. So how did you guys have to recreate this machine? I mean, tell me the whole story of the documentary. I'll just shut up now. I want to know. It was very interesting.
So when I met with Paul, he told me about that story. He wanted to make that into a feature film, and the interesting story about that event is basically that the next very day when that happened, I remember watching that on CNN when it happened.
Ronald Reagan died,
and I was just blown away. I'm like, and then the day after the Ronald Reagan dies, and everybody stops talking about it. Yeah. So that's how it got completely forgotten. But Paul wanted to make that into a feature film, and he tried so many times. And then 2017 or whenever it was, basically he managed to get somebody interested in making a documentary about it, and he jumped on it because he thought like it was great. I can make a documentary now, and then I can make a feature later. It's like this is the story that needs to be told. He actually was adamant about making this thing because it was about care. It was about us. It was about a single human being who thinks that he's wrongly done, and based on that opinion, he goes out and tries to destroy the world.
Yeah,
it's a story about everyday person basically trying to get but it's also what was so interesting about that story that it's it's an also like a very unique American story. It's like a Western story. Later on, we found out that that was the way of the West also, and in a way, like spending some time in Colorado, you realize that was a Wild West for sure. And it was a Wild West back in the day. They had cowboys and running with outlaws and stuff like that. So basically, like the story. He got the beef with the Marvin Heemeyer. He had a beef with the city, and he thought he was done wrong, and built a bulldozer and went on the rampage and destroyed half a town. But our approach, so we traveled several times to Colorado to do the interviews with the survivors and everybody, and the city was completely divided. It was when we first came there, they knew somehow everyone. It's a small town; it's like 1,000 people.
Yeah,
but people knew that we came to make a documentary, and some of the people were supportive. And some of the people thought that we shouldn't dare to say anything bad about Marvin, because half of the city considered him a hero and half of them considered him a criminal. And the city is still divided to this day about his doing and what he's done.
Yeah, like the Thompson family wanted to
they
wanted to put that tractor up in a museum or something after it all happened, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, they were so funny, the Thompson family, Thompson brothers were like, yeah, they thought they could put it, and they thought they could make a better one than Marvin. And then also like the whole irony was like that he was saying like, yep, they pushed his buttons, and the guy went off after their mother. He destroyed their house,
Yeah.
So it was so many things that were like completely like mind blowing. When we were there, we were like, how can they even say things like this? Like some stuff that you don't understand, but I guess it's a mentality. It's people are different, and they react to things differently, And still, like people think he was a hero, and I don't think Paul's intention wasn't to make him a hero or to make him a villain. It was just to tell the story from both perspectives, and have people decide on their own what Marvin is. And I think
it develops.
I think he succeeded in that sense.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
Like when you watch it, like I watched it, and there is no narrative to the background. You all really just depict it, and you build the story off of it. And I mean, for a little bit, you're almost like you build suspense to it. You're like, I'm kind of wondering where this is going. So it really tells itself in that point. Like when you had people watch the documentary, did they ask you? Upon viewing, if you sat and watched it with anyone who was like, what's going to happen, if they didn't already know the story?
Well, people are always like, I can't believe that this happened. People can't believe it's a documentary like that, because people, it's such unusual thing that happened,
Yeah.
But we were lucky actually to get decent amount of money for that film. So we used the same cameras and lenses that we use for cleaning, which were anamorphic lenses. And we wanted to shoot like an epic film, like a feature documentary, So we used like a large format and big anamorphic lenses, and we photographed Colorado in its all glory. But when it came down to the bulldozer, we actually shot the entire recreation in California, in Central California, in a small town called I can't remember now what's it called, but it's in Central California, in the Central Valley. In agricultural country, and we had our friend Rob Wilson King, production designer, who designed many great films, among others Rush Hour, and he was a production designer for Breaking Bad.
All right.
And I've done several films with him, and this was our first collaboration with Paul. And he basically was so excited about it, and he found the way to build the entire bulldozer. So we had two builds. We had like a regular bulldozer, and he recreated Marvin's design. Obviously, he didn't put the concrete and all that stuff. It was all made out of lighter materials. But it was made exactly to look like Marvin's tank.
Yeah.
And then we built on the separate stage. We built interior of the bulldozer. And we shot those recreations for, I think, around 2 weeks, more or less. And then in order to drive the city, I think it was Mariposa, or what was it called? But because the bulldozer couldn't go on the, it was too expensive to do all that recreation in Granby.
Yeah.
So we basically did it in this small town in Central California, and we put it on the lowrider. And because you couldn't drive the bulldozer in the city street, it would destroy the concrete. It would destroy the road in the city because it's so heavy.
Yeah.
So we put in a low rider and we shot rigged the cameras on it and had got the different angles and got the idea of the actual bulldozer moving through the city. And of course, it was combined with the actual footage of the whole event.
I was wondering because what did they do with the thing once you wrapped production? Did they just deconstruct it?
Yeah, we just disconstructed it, and the bulldozer went back on the construction to work, and the rest of the stuff was, I don't know what happened with the rest of the things.
That's crazy. That's a hell of a. It was an interesting thing to make a documentary about. But when I was watching it, because you watch things, you take it for granted. And when they were talking about the complexity of the time that he spent building it, the time, because he was, again, just to kind of put the story in a little more context for the listener, the guy owned a muffler shop that he was leasing out. At some point, he began to lease it out, and he was living in the back of it still. And this is where he kind of reclusively spent a lot of his time building this thing. Now, I was interested because when you watch, like I said, you watch things, you take it for granted. And when I looked at that, and I was like, wow, actually, these are like cinematic shots. Like, they rebuilt that. That is crazy. So I thought that I had to ask.
Yeah.
Well, let's
we did rebuild.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, no, I mean, we rebuilt it, and it's also like, as I said, when you watch the movie, I mean, when you guys watch the film, like, you'll see, like, we use the super wide lenses, and we really wanted to put these people in the environment. It's like you got to be aware where these people come from and how does the mentality develop. We wanted actually, I mean, it was almost a study on like how the environment influences people. Like, and it was the first thing when we went there. It was like we saw like so many like killed and stuffed animals everywhere.
A lot of taxidermy.
That's interesting. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Look, I grew up in like Appalachia in back east in the United States, and it hit home like that to a degree. With we used to call the small town like Little Hollywood, because everybody has their own drama. There's a lot going on, So I understand what you mean.
Yeah, well, I mean, we wanted to capture that. We wanted to give the audience a taste of where these people come from. Where is this taking place? This is like such a unique American place, such a unique American story.
Well, let's talk about your latest film, The Munsters, directed by Rob Zombie. So, at what point did you become involved with this production?
I actually got a call from producer Mike Elliott. That was like 4 months before. So we went to Budapest in March, and I got a call like in December of 2020, basically saying like, and I did a movie with Mike for Universal. I shot a sequel to that film, Unbroken.
Yeah.
And he called me and he goes, "Hey man, what are you up to?" He goes, "Would you like to do a Rob Zombie movie?" And I was like, "Sure." Like, yes, of course. And he goes, "Okay, cool. So here's the script. Read the script. Tell me what you think. And if you like it, I'll set up a call with you and Rob." And yeah, I read a script and I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. It was nothing like Rob has done before. I really liked the script. I laughed out loud reading it. And I was in. I was like, yeah, I want to do it. I met with Rob. We spoke a little bit, and he goes, "Man, listen, Mike told me great things about it. If I like your stuff, I like your reel. If you want to do this, film is yours." And I was like, "Damn, this is amazing. I want to do it. I'm in."
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how I got involved. Well, yeah, and then like they already actually like then I learned that they started the prep and then they stopped because of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Rob sent me a Bible which had like 300 pages, and then you could, like, the guy was preparing to do this film all his life. Like, this was his baby. He's a fan of Munsters since he was a child, and he wanted to make this movie 20 years ago. But he never managed to make it. Like so finally he got a chance to do it, and he gave everything creatively to make this film. So I was honored and kind of like nervous going into it because I knew how much this meant to him. So yeah, it was crazy days of pandemic. I have to say, like really insane stuff. I mean, they told us we're going to go to Budapest and then we're going to travel. That we're going to stay all in one house, and that we're all going to travel together. But I didn't understand that we're going to travel on the private plane. So basically, in LA, like I had, like I got dropped off at the airport, and it was myself and two lead actors, Jeff and Dan, and we flew to the East Coast, pick up Rob and Sherry, and we flew to Budapest. And all together, we entered our new home, which was like this Brody house in the center of Budapest. And Mike was already there, Mike Elliott, the producer, and it was us 3.5 months in that place, being tested every other day for COVID. And, we were in the hotel. It's a private hotel. It had like 20 rooms, but we occupied only 7 or 8 rooms. And we had service people that would come during the day to make us coffee and breakfast. And for lunch, for dinners, we would like, each of us would order a dinner. Every night, one of us would order a dinner, and we pay for everybody. And we would sit and talk, and Rob would sometimes play guitar, and it was great. It was just amazing time, just hanging out all the time, and we talked about the film scouting and meeting the local crew, and then going back to our Brody bubble at the end of the day, which no one else was allowed to come.
So you all had to even stay separate from each other all after in between production. So you basically spent a lot of time alone.
Well, it was us, 7 of us or 8 of us. How many like we originally came together?
Yeah,
we were considered like if we stayed together, and we use all like we didn't have to wear masks when we were together because we were like, okay, we live in the same house, so But everybody else was like, no one else wasn't able to come into the Brody house, and the whole crew was like, staying. Everybody was a local Hungarian crew, so they all went home and would come back to work. But and we had our separate bathrooms on the set also, and those were the crazy days.
That's so funny though. It's like what do you like? People are like, so what'd you do during the pandemic? You're like, oh, I was quarantined with Rob Zombie for a while. We made a movie. That's cool. No, like what camera did you use to shoot it? What did you shoot on? Because I was trying to look up the specs because I wanted to ask more about the color and stuff. But what camera did you use?
Well, we actually production recommended Sony camera, but we did tests, and Rob and I, settled for Alexa. So we shot an regular Alexa Mini, and with the master primes and a few ingenue zooms.
So, but you didn't
15 to 40 and 24 to 290, and the set of master primes, and as I said, Alexa Mini. Yeah.
Oh, so you did not the LF, just the standard Mini.
Yes, standard Mini, yeah.
So you had to flip those 512 gigabyte cards. Like how? Oh man, I bet you were flipping in and out of that shit fast, weren't you?
Yeah. I mean, you're shooting like RAW.
Yeah.
Shot it in RAW, 3.4K, and it's great. I mean, I love that camera. I think that camera is still.
Oh man, that camera is a monster. It's a workhorse, man. It'll. You can run that thing for like 15 hours and it won't burn out on you. That camera is a workhorse.
Yeah, it's tested, and I shot many films on it. I knew like really well the exposure and how far can you push it. And I never shot on Sony, and I didn't like when you compare it side by side, Sony and Alexa. Sony is great also, and maybe if you didn't compare it side by side, you wouldn't notice. But I just like the way the Alexa handled the highlights, and also Alexa has something. Even if technically Sony might be better because it shoots 8K. Alexa has something that looks more filmic. It reminds you more on the film.
Yeah, it does. It's got like a softer look, almost like a softer look to it, Like and it's because of that chromaticity design in the camera. I think is why it does that.
It was definitely it's camera engineering that gives you that kind of feel that it's definitely something that it's in camera that gives you the feeling of the film look. I mean, that's what happened when I first time tested Alexa and Red for that movie with Mikhail Solomon. We tested the Red and Alexa, and Red looked bigger because he shoots like at that time was shooting 4K and Alexa was shooting only 2K. So the footage looks bigger and looks grand, but Alexa looked like what we were used to seeing film.
Yeah.
And I think that's all embedded in our memory somehow, and we all kind of gravitate towards that.
Well, it's just that, in the color science embedded, like with where even though like the Arri Mini shoots at 12-bit, but it's linear to 16-bit, and I know we're getting a bit technical now, but basically it allows the color science, you're where you would see banding and in, let's use the sky as a reference, in a sunset, and the intricacy of the colors as they delineate from one into the other. And when the bandwidth is higher, obviously, then, you can get that array much more in detail, and when it's a soft palette behind it, it looks really, really good. But how does now shooting with the Arri, you can shoot under a lot of low light, but the newer lights that have gone from like tungsten lights, now we've got these like sky panels and stuff that are all completely LED. How do you like shooting under those? How's the interactivity between lighting and working with the Arri for you? And especially on the set like the Munsters where you have a lot of color.
Yeah, I mean, we actually we use a lot of LED lights and LED lights, and use a lot of Asteras and stuff like that. I mean, most of the lights that we used were like LED lights for the Munsters, and the choice was like because we could control the color and we could change the color on the spot, and Rob actually wanted to be as colorful as possible. He actually encouraged me. I don't think I would have gone this far if it wasn't for his encouragement. He was actually pushing to go like. He goes, more. I want more color. So we were like really pushing it to the maximum, like for the maximum of the camera's capability. And one thing I was worried that it's just going to start buzzing, and then the colors could become so strong that the signal to noise ratio will start to get increased. But yeah, we were able to control everything nicely, and then Rob wanted to have a lot of movements in the light and changing lights and things like that, because he originally wanted to make it black and white, but since they would never allow him to make a black and white film, he wanted to make it completely opposite, like to go into the complete opposite direction and do like as colorful as possible. And yeah, we were lucky with locations in Budapest were amazing. I mean, that the Count's house, that's real location actually, that they shot Blade Runner also, scenes in. And we had a great art direction, and yeah, to Rob's credit, I mean, and he really like there was no too many things that he. I mean, he would just push color, push. I want this glowing. I want. So yeah, I was very encouraged by him, and I went for a run.
How was it? How was it with the elaboracy of the outfits and the set design? How is it when you have to work around some of these set designs? If you're presented with something that can be intricate, so to speak. I mean, are you able to normally, if it's designed on a soundstage, are you normally able to have and this is a naive question probably, but are you able to have a lot of control as far as, hey, I'm going to be here, or I want to do this here. We were sitting here, so we need to position it and block it this way.
Well, I mean, it's we were kind of like sets were built, and we were carefully designed for the camera angles, so there weren't that many options that you can change. You know what I mean? There was like, since it was a set and we were, fairly limited budget. It wasn't a low budget film, but we didn't have like all the money in the world or all the time in the world. So we knew the angles ahead of time, and within that we were able to, I mean, a lot of sets are built just because we knew that we were going to film from two particular angles and that we're never going to turn around, let's say. So that limits you to what can you do. But again, the limitations are good. So I think we took the most advantage of it that we could have. Yeah, the sets were designed for the shots, basically. And that really helped execution. I mean, we had 30 days to shoot, which is not a lot. But with all things happening, there were always like a lot of characters and a lot of makeup. And I mean, it was like it would take hours to get all these guys ready.
That's what
so
I
every
figured.
Change would yeah. So every change, every unanticipated change would eat up a lot of time. So we had to be very precise about everything. And I think we did. I think we did a good job. We maximized our time, and it's also like this is the very different way than Rob usually shoots his film. This was like he was very open for suggestions, and I came in and I suggested like that we do more like a more classical way because I'm sure a lot of your audience is familiar with Rob's films, which is a lot of close-ups and a lot of like really big shots and stuff like that. And my suggestion was to do this movie more like in terms of more of the classical filmmaking, which would be shot in the reverse shot. So you shoot an actor on the wider lens and you come closer instead of on the zoom or in the really long lens from far away close-ups, because also, it's a comedy, so it's a physical comedy, so you don't want to use too many long lenses and to lose the physicality of acting, which this film was full of. So I would use like wider lenses and closer. Then you get the closer on the wider lens on 27 or 32, in which you can still see the actor's movement of the body and because they're acting with their body, not only with their faces. And Rob really loved it. I think it turned out pretty well, actually, the concept of the film. And
it's what I like about it. I think you're what you say about going with the classical view and how Rob's movies have a very, very defined aesthetic to them, and that's, like you said, that's very clear. Now he does get away from that in this drastically, and I think that even though there's something that's there about it does have its own uniqueness, and it is a departure from that. So you elaborating on that really takes it, puts it into perspective that it's not so assuming. Now with the close-ups, say where you have a lot of the realistic close-ups, where was that done in post with where you have the hearts in the background and all of that, and the really cartoonish stuff?
No, actually, that was all done. That stuff was that was all Rob's idea. I mean, but that was done on set. We actually had a projector, very similar projector to the one that I was explaining from the breakthrough that projected the water.
Okay.
It's like a moving head projector that you can create a custom gobos. Roscoe makes them. So we had our Rob designed certain patterns and certain the hearts and all that stuff. And we sent it out to Germany. They built it for us and they sent us back, and we used it as the gobos in those lights. So we would use the neutral gray background in the background, and we would project it behind actors. We wanted to do as many things as possible in camera, rather than to do anything in post. So all that stuff was done in camera.
Well, let's talk about film budgets for a second. So I've always wondered this. Let's say you're given a $500,000 budget for a film, and so, how much of a say do you have as a DOP in what is allocated towards, camera equipment and lighting?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It's always the, $500,000 film. That's a very small film.
Yeah.
So you can't make a lot of money on it. You're not gonna get rich off of it, but you can also so. It all depends. What do you have to pay actors? What are the locations? What is how much time you want to allocate to something. But I can say around $500,000 budget, you can get, let's say, one camera or maybe two camera, older Alexas, set, maybe set of older lenses, one zoom. And maybe if you have a super small crew, you can do 18 days. But nowadays, I don't think so. This is more realistic to do it in 12 days.
Yeah.
So, but let's say if you go less orthodox way, let's say if I would direct something now or work with Paul on $500,000 budget, because we are not afraid of doing that also. That's why, again, another reason why I really love working with Paul, because we would be smart. We would get maybe a one grip, one electric, or maybe just one crew member, one camera assistant, and put all that money into locations and other things, So maybe two lights, and maybe I would use just two lights or three lights, and limit mice like that, instead of trying to light it, you find the location that it's kind of lit, that you're going to use the windows, that you don't have to spend much time on that. You adjust you adjust yourself for the story.
Yeah.
So I think that's very possible also to do. So I would encourage people, like, if you have a super small budget, don't spend it on. Try to figure it out. How can you get the most days? I mean, I was watching recently the documentary on Stanley Kubrick, for example, and something so interesting about him. He shot most of his films like a low budget films, and this one was about Full Metal Jacket. So, like, I don't know if you guys remember Full Metal Jacket.
Oh
but
yeah,
there's
and
like
they shot those war scenes in London, or in England. They shot them and constructed the set to make it look like that in England. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, they did
Yeah.
that, but the boot camp scenes, they actually pre-lit everything. They built the set and they pre-lit with the fluorescent lights, and they pre-lit all the lights through the windows, everything.
Oh, all right.
And then the crew would leave, and they would just because it was union crew. So one guy would come in a day. He would just turn all the lights on, and he would go home, basically come at the evening just to turn them off.
Nice.
And they shot without any crew. So, it's there's so many different ways to do things.
Yeah.
I think the biggest problem, as my command said, like, your biggest enemy is the time and money, and your biggest friend for the film. So, like, how it is always like, how do you maximize your days? How do you maximize your time with actors? And one way to do it is to have a small crew.
When you put your production together, like when the production's put together, though, like if there's a way to articulate, say, like someone wants they want it to look a certain way, or they have an idea about it, but they don't exactly understand the techniques behind the camera. So you're like, you're looking at the budget allocation, and you're like, look, we can shoot this on, let's say, a red versus an airy for conventional standards. Now, do you normally have to make that call and be able to explain to them, say, all right, well, look, we can go down on a weekly package or something of that, so to speak, right? And we can get this build down, and these are the differences within that, but it'll save us this much money. Now, or do you tell them, say something like, well, maybe if we spend more, it's gonna save you, if you're shooting on a camera that doesn't overheat so fast, or that can hold more information. How do you approach that?
Well, exactly. It's exactly like that. I mean, you got to wait it out and see, like, see what is the priority, So for me, like, if you don't usually, like, for the director of photography, you don't get the budget. They just give you give them, like, production designers, they get the budget, but camera doesn't get the budget. But they after you give them your equipment list, they say, like, hey, this is too much. We have to bring it down. Like, let's say it's X amount of money, it has to be X amount of money. It's $20,000. It has to be $10,000. What can we do? And then that's where you roll up your sleeves and you start thinking, okay, so instead of using this brand new Alexa camera, I'm going to use maybe older Alexa, or I'm going to use maybe look into the different camera. I mean, for example, like, I was just working with Paul. We just finished a month ago. We finished a new documentary. And this is it's another one. I think you're gonna love it. It's about 1976 Chowchilla kidnapping case.
Oh, all right.
If you're familiar with that.
Not so much that I could discuss it well, but it sounds really interesting for sure.
It's an incredible story. It's just mind-blowing story that the three guys decided to kidnap a school bus.
Oh, God.
And state of California for ransom. It's a horrifying story, and it's just like so deep and so complex and so psychologically twisted and insane that it's just like, it's out of this world. I think the film is going to be so good, but I'm just using that as an example, and it touches a couple of things. It's a couple of, like, my projects. So that's one of the projects that I'm working on still and finishing. But it's also like, we were presenting the case that we didn't have much money for that film. We didn't have a lot of money for that film. Didn't have as much money as for The Thread, for example. It's still not low budget by all means. We still use Rob to build the sets and we build incredible sets. But we were presenting with the case that if we want to we can't use the cameras that we use for Thread, so we can't use Alexa. So producer suggested, like he said, he used a couple of times Sony FX6, and we were like, okay, cool, we're gonna go test it, and we tested it, and we found like this relatively cheap Chinese anamorphic lenses,
Yeah.
Vasens, and we decided to use that. We were like, okay, this is what we're gonna do. The look is good enough, the camera is good enough, it can handle it's got a good latitude, it can handle a lot of good highlights, and the anamorphic look is great. So that's what we did. In order to save the money, we just scaled down on the cameras and on the lens package, and we went with something that was way, way, way more affordable. So we were able to get more days to shoot. And also when we did the recreations, we were first toying with the idea that we're going to do it on Alexa. But then, there was no point. We were like, no, let's just keep it small and let's put all the money on the screen. Let's use these cameras. And I'm very pleased with the results. Very pleased. Surprised myself, actually.
Nice.
Because I thought I'm never going to shoot anything if it's on Alexa. But I mean, these days, there's so many cameras that are great.
Well, what do you have you gotten your hands on the 35 yet?
Well, I'm about to do a project that I can't really talk about because I have very tight non-disclosure agreement.
I understand.
But I on this project we're about to start shooting now, and we have 3 Area 35s. So
nice.
Maybe we can talk about it after I finish.
We will. Either that or we'll just I'll hit you up later. But yeah, I know because I know that that Sony, there's been like the Sony Vista Visions, a new one I think that's come out that's kind of been contending. But I've seen where they discontinued the Airy Mini because of the LF, and the accessibility to the LF with that 1 terabyte codex card, and then I think you can. What is it with the Mini? There's a difficulty in sound. Like, I know it doesn't record native sounds, isn't it? So you have to time lock it, of course, traditionally. But does the LF have like you can get a scratch track on the camera itself? Is that the difference in that?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. I'm not sure. I'm very impressed actually about your knowledge of the cameras. It seems like you know more about technical stuff about the cameras than I do.
Well, I've done some crazy things we can talk off the air about, but right now. Right now, my character is not as informed as the real me. No. Anyway.
Yeah, I am not sure about that. I think there was a problem with the sound with the Alexa Mini, and I think Alexa Mini was this kind of like I think they need to get rid of it because it doesn't shoot pure 4K, and a lot of networks now like demanding 4K. So I think that's why they went to the Mini LF, and then now finally they managed to create a completely new chip with the Alexa 35, and from what I see, it's the best camera out there.
Yeah,
I mean, it's better than film ever was, and I think it's a game changer, so many ways.
No,
but it's I mean, but it's also like that old stuff is great, but the story is always the most important thing. I think a lot of people get involved in technicalities and stuff like that, and I like to shoot as anybody else on a good camera, but I would always choose something that allows me to make a better story than that gives me more days and stuff like that. So I tend to gravitate towards better. It's hard to get away from technicalities, and they're very important, but I think they are that important that they're not determining factor for any project. I think you should choose the project based on your means, and if you have money to use the best, then go ahead, because obviously that's the best. But if you don't, make sure that you have enough money left over so you can tell the story.
Understand. That makes good sense. All right, Zoran. Well, we are short on time, but we appreciate you taking the time to join us on the show tonight. I want to shout out for your information so people can check on more information about you, and you can check out Zoran and his work. So you want to visit his website at zoranpopovic.com, and that's spelled ZORANPOPOVIC, and of course .com. I'm Poxy Leonard here with Miss Rakin, and it's time for a quick break. Zoran, we thank you for joining us on the show tonight.
Thank you so much, guys. It was a pleasure talking to you.
All right, well, stay tuned. We'll be back shortly right here on The Ghost of Hollywood. What's up, wall crawlers? Going insane for the new episodes of The Ghost of Hollywood? Well, check out our website at theghostofhollywood.com for complete access to our entire second season.
And don't forget to listen, like, and subscribe to The Ghost of Hollywood wherever you get your podcasts for all the latest updates and information.
And while you're at it, sign up for our monthly newsletter.
Alright, everybody, stay tuned because you're listening to the worst in cult, trash, and cinema. This is The Ghost of Hollywood.
Welcome back to The Ghost of Hollywood. I'm Poxy Leonard here with Miss Reagan, and the time has come to say so long on tonight's episode.
We'd like to thank our guest, Zoran Popovic, for joining us tonight to discuss his career as a cinematographer. We'd also like to thank our crew here at The Ghost of Hollywood for all their hard work.
Yeah, Chris has been on his A-game lately, and listen to all this wild shit Jesse has been composing. Posse in the house.
Alright, everybody, Foxy and I will return in just a few weeks as we break into our third season.
Please remember to visit our website at theghostofhollywood.com for all of the latest on the show. And while you're there, sign up for our monthly newsletter. Please, come on, somebody sign up for it. You know you want to.
Oh my god. Until next time, everybody, good morning.
And good night. Are we done? Was that it?
I'd hope so.
All right, I'm getting out of here. I gotta go. I
We've
gotta
been
get
here
my
for
limo.
hours.
You have been listening to another episode of The Ghost of Hollywood. The Ghost of Hollywood is directed by Zach Flannery. The show is authored by Chris Klon and Zach Flannery. Composition samples and score by Jesse Garcia in Pineapple Nightmare. Production management by Mary Flannery at the Electric Garden Company. And mastering by Grady Sizemore and Microphonic Meltdown in Portland, Oregon. For more information on The Ghost of Hollywood, please visit theghostofhollywood.com.